I call the meeting to order for the April 27th regular meeting. Madam Clerk.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Thank you. Mr. Harp, do we have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor Avery. There's no closed session report this evening.
Thank you. And now is the time for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Muldoon will provide the invocation, and Councilmember Brenner will lead us in the pledge.
Thank you. Please stand and join us if you so choose. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together at this time of peace, to gather and to do the work of the people. Thank you that we have a great staff, first responders, members of the community who want to be participating in all avenues of our lives here. Thank you for all the blessings, and we appreciate the great waves you sent to us this last weekend. Shows how powerful you are. We thank you for everything, Lord, and your goodness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we're on to council announcements and oral reports from council members on their committee activities. Councilmember Brenner, do you have any announcements or reports?
I do. I met with the Corona Del Mar bid, and they are contemplating their dissolution, and I will be coming back to council with that in one of the future meetings. But one of the side effects of that is that they are the ones that provide the holiday decorations in Corona Del Mar. So we're looking at other options and other partnerships to see who might take that over. Also on this Thursday night at 5 o'clock, I have a District 6 Town Hall meeting. We're going to be talking about the processes for citizens to use to get traffic changes made in their area, such as the one that we're considering tonight for Dover Shores. The people in Corona Del Mar are asking for changes, and so our city staff is going to be talking about what the process is that they go through if they'd like to request changes from the council. We also have Mike Senacore, who's going to be there to talk about the process for undergrounding so that he can give them all the information they need to know in case they'd like to move forward with that. And I have a slide of my trip to the CYC for Reptile Day. I don't know if they're showing. Right, there we go. This was so much fun. Next time they have it, we should publicize it. The kids were having a great time, and this was the prettiest yellow snake I've ever seen in my life, and I finally understood snake skin boots and purses and things like that. It was gorgeous. So anyway, that was fun, and that was it.
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill?
Yep, thank you. So we had a Finance Committee meeting. We are in the process right now of creating our budget. We will be reviewing our draft budget very soon from our city manager at the Finance Committee, so I encourage everyone to pay attention on that. I was able to make the connection between our mayor here in Newport Beach and our new mayor over in Costa Mesa recently, and that was a lot of fun. It was great to have them have that conversation. And then not surprisingly, by the way, we talked Housing Element Update Committee, or Housing Element Updates. We have around 45,000 housing units here in Newport Beach. We need to find space, as we talked about at study session, of about 4,800. They have around 40,000 housing units, and they need to find space for almost 12,000. So that was an interesting discussion. And then I was able to attend the Matt Leinart flag football camp for girls. They had about 150 young ladies out there. They had the first female NFL coach out there to coach up the young ladies, which was a lot of fun, and it was great to see them out practicing and training and getting into the sports. And then the last one, I was able to host a Girl Scout troop in the council chambers last week. Had them all sit up here and explain to me how they would make our city better. And the number one was more police officers, more firefighters, and more ambulances. And it got me to think, and I just asked the question: how many of you had a positive interaction with a police officer? and every single one of them raised their hand. And I will say real quickly, given what we've been going through as a nation lately, the fact that we had a bunch of young ladies in here who have all had positive interactions with their police and have positive impressions of their police, it's a really big deal. And I just want to say, especially to our police department, thank you. And then I've got one slide. The City of Newport Beach has its 2021 scholarship program, which are $700 scholarships. I encourage you to apply. The application deadline is May 3rd at 5 p.m. If you'd like to apply, please go to newportbeachca.gov/scholarship. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a slide. I'll start right with this. Last week, there was a Speak Up Newport Zoom meeting to, once again, as we do annually, and what do I want to say, increase the enthusiasm, encourage our residents to become involved in civic affairs of the community. And this is the time of year that we announce that our certain members are terming out on our boards and commissions. We actually have 13 openings that will be occurring as of June 30th. So the process for applying, the application period is open at all times throughout the year, but the deadline for this year's appointments is 12 noon on May 12th. Applications are due to the city clerk, and then the applications are reviewed from May 13th to June 1st, and there's a council ad hoc interview committee. And June 8th, the nominees will be included in the agenda on the consent calendar on the City Council. And on June 22nd, those nominees will be voted, elected to serve on those committees. So the committees are the Board of Library Trustees, there's 1 seat, Building and Fire Board of Appeals, 2 seats, City Arts Commission, 2 seats, Civil Service, 1 seat, Harbor Commission, 2 seats, Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission, 2 seats, and the Planning Commission, 2 seats. Some of those are reappointments, and some are actually termed out. So, again, strongly encourage our residents in our community. You're all good leaders, and you love our community, and this is an excellent way to participate and help develop policy recommendations that actually come to the City Council and to work to improve our community. So look forward to seeing lots of applications. I have to say there's a caveat. There are only 13 spots, so we always get more applications. But your applications are good for 2 years and can be renewed. And so if at first you don't succeed, try again. Just a couple other announcements. The Aviation Committee met last week ago, Monday, and I just report all is going well on our ad hoc working groups are doing a lot of good work, especially on intergovernmental relations and looking at different flight departure paths. So a lot of good technical work is going on. Also, we heard in the study session that a number of us met with Larry Tucker, who's chair of our Housing Element Update Advisory Committee. So I met with him. And also talked with other consultants who actually, the gentleman spoke at our study session, Mr. Costa, and that was very helpful to understanding more the really into the weeds of housing policy. And our solid waste working group continues to work on our new solid waste contract with CR&R. And last Wednesday was the installation for my successor as president of ACCOC, which is the Associated California Cities of Orange County. 34 cities belong to this organization in Orange County. And Barbara Del Glaze is the incoming president. She's council member, former mayor at Huntington Beach. And this is an organization where all electeds, we all work together to help one another understand what's coming down from Sacramento and mandating our way of life. But it was an honor to serve the cities as president this past year, and I'll remain as immediate past president, but continue to see value in ACCOC's work, and proud that our city manager is the city manager liaison with ACCOC. So, there you're over here, and value her contributions as well. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Blanc.
I don't have too much to add. Thank you, Council Member O'Neill, for the Finance Committee update. And I did miss this last airport committee. Thank you, Councilmember Dixon, for taking over. It was my son's birthday. and he does take precedent over the airport committee. I know you don't understand that entirely, but I was out on the water this weekend. It was the first time that the boys from NAC and the girls actually were scrimmaging with Long Beach, so we're getting some regattas going back in the bay, which is always great to see. The boat's back up, and NAC is off to Oklahoma this weekend for national, so exciting for our local kids. They're getting really excited to be back involved in competition, and I think just seeing the kids flourish a little bit more is really a lot of our goals right here. So thank you very much.
Mr. Duffield. And Mr. Mulvaney. There, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that I was down at Wedge this weekend with my family, and feels like it's been since high school since I went and watched the waves. It's nice to go down there. Some of the biggest sets I've ever seen. And, it's good to know life is getting back to normal, and so many people were outside enjoying the beach. On a totally unrelated subject, I want to place on a future agenda accelerated dwelling unit issue. As you're aware, accelerated dwelling units are a good way for Newport Beach to generate units that fulfill the requirements of the state-mandated RENA numbers. I proposed a waiver of the ADU permit fees, which I think we voted on this evening, and sort of like a fee holiday to try to capture some of those units that haven't been acknowledged. But I think we need to do more. I'd like to have placed on a future agenda a review of our most recently adopted ADU ordinance with the goal of finding a way to more liberally capture these units in our count. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this the time to add future agenda items?
Go right ahead.
All right, I'd like to propose, we did talk about this, generally speaking, in the study session, that we restart our general plan update process, and if it needs an agenda item, but just to place that as a priority, that we resurrect and reinstate the general plan update, with consideration given to the former members and for their consideration to participate again, and then obviously have an application process to refill that, but I'd like to get going on that. Thank you.
So, and I've got just a few things here. I attended the Finance Committee meeting and an Orange County Sanitation District Board meeting. Both were interesting in different ways. But a couple of highlights for me, thank you. I had the distinct honor to assist Chief Lewis in the police awards ceremony just a few days ago, and it was done at Marina Park, and it was obviously a very much different ceremony than normally they do every year with a huge breakfast, and this was at Marina Park, but it was no less compelling, the story of heroism, good deeds, just reminding me of what a great police force we have, and the men and women of the Newport Beach Police Department. It's incredible, and I'm just so thankful we live in a community that's exceptionally well policed, and by folks who really care about other people and still are able to conduct their business in a very efficient way. And that was really the highlight. And then another one was I got to interview Mark Vukojevic, who's our director of our utilities department, which I call the most interesting department in the city. It's so varied. He's in charge of our oil wells, among other things, besides managing our entire water supply and various other infrastructure that is so critical that we all take for granted, rather. And I thought it went very well, and it's going to be shown on YouTube and the YouTube channel, and also on NBTV. Probably in the next few days it'll be up. And it's only an excellent show because Mr. Vukojevic had just great answers and went into detail on the infrastructure within the city, and just the challenges of that department and how important it is just by virtue of what he does day to day. You realize it real quick. So it's going to be excellent, but it's all due to Mr. Vukojevich's really great answers to my very simple questions. And I've got a couple things to report out here, as you see the slide up there. So we're very proud of our ability now to do some vaccines and to give the vaccine. And I think is that tomorrow? Wednesday, April 28th? Yes. 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And so I know many of us have received the vaccine, but here's an opportunity. Walk-ins are welcome for individuals 18 years and older. And it's the Moderna first dose. So it's going to be right here, and we hope to see as many people as possible get their vaccine. And what do we have next on this? Oh, boat auction. Who doesn't love a boat auction? So this is going to be at 1600 West Balboa Boulevard, and that would be around Marina Park, wouldn't it? I think so. And May 7th, 10 a.m. And so there are kayaks, Boston whalers, ski boats, jet skis. No, I'm overselling it, but these are boats that were impounded or wound up on the beach, and their titles have been cleared. And it's a great opportunity with summer coming on to get into a kayak or something at a very reasonable cost. I'm not sure who the auctioneer is, but it'll be entertaining as well, as most auctions always are. Is there one more slide, or is that it? There we go. So this is a great thing. If you know of anyone, or you're within involved with a community program within the city of Newport Beach, you can apply for grants to help fund that program. And if you're considering throwing a special event, like a new 5K or something, you could apply for a grant. So this is the time to do so. And just go to www.newportbeachca.gov grants. And it's just extra money for people that are doing great things in our town. So I really hope all the grants get used up. Thank you. So now do we...
Brad, I forgot one thing.
Oh, sorry.
I forgot one thing. I need to let people know that the beaches at China Cove are temporarily closed. An invasive plant was discovered on the ocean floor, the bay floor, right off the coast of China Cove. And this is a plant that is sometimes found in aquariums, but they're not sure how it got there, but it grows at exceedingly fast rates. And so they're working with the state agencies to figure out how to eradicate that so it doesn't grow even more pervasive in our bay. So the beaches at China Cove are closed.
Okay. So circling back to the A1 items, do we have, shall we have a show of hands for this first one? Accessory dwelling unit. What's that? For you? Yeah, for the next meeting. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so we're on to Councilmember O'Neill's ask council to consider implementation of the Balboa Village Master Plan is now complete. And so he's asking to remove the Balboa Village Area Benefit District from the Area Benefit District Reserve, Section 12.44.029, and rescind Resolution 2014-101, which provides that 100% of funds generated within the Balboa Village Area Benefit District should be placed in the Balboa Village Area Benefit District Fund and return all unprogrammed funds back to the general fund. Show of hands. Great.
6-1 with Councilmember Brenner.
I need more details on that one.
Yeah. Council members Brenner and Dixon have asked council to consider better beaches to ensure the city's beaches are safe and enjoyable for residents and visitors. In light of the growing number of beachgoers, we request staff to review and discuss, number one, the current resources allocated to maintain, manage, and secure our beaches, and number two, alternatives and cost information associated with providing a higher level of service at city beaches for trash pickup, boardwalk ambassadors, lifeguard coverage, and code enforcement as a part of the presentation for the proposed 21-22 budget.
That would be Mayor Avery and council members Dixon, O'Neill, and Brenner. Oh, and Duffield.
Mr. Mayor, we haven't passed yet the new change to A1, but I have one quick question on that.
Sure.
Can I exercise that now, assuming it passes? Okay, great. What is a boardwalk ambassador?
Well, you haven't maybe have them, why don't we ask the city manager? It's a pilot program that is in operation now.
Sure, we've put in a pilot program where we have contracted with an outside security company essentially to provide boardwalk ambassadors in 2 teams of 2 to be out on the boardwalk weekends during the off season and 7 days a week during the summer to provide education and provide an extra level of eyes on the boardwalk, and they work together with the pet and our police officers together through that. So it's a trial program we're doing currently right now.
Great. I wasn't sure what that meant. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we've got our vote on that. Do you need another show of hands?
Sure, if,
Okay.
just in case the vote changes. Okay, it is still the same. It is 5 with
All right.
Mayor Avery and council members Duffield, Dixon, O'Neill, and Brenner. Thank you.
All right, and council members Dixon and O'Neill have asked council to consider this following request for a resolution supporting AB 327 COVID-19 vaccination status, prohibition on required disclosure.
That would be unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the notice regarding public comments.
This is the time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar for discussion. Those are items 1 through 10. Public comments are also invited on consent calendar items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine, will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Thank you. Councilmember Brenner, do you have any items to pull from the consent calendar or conflicts to announce related to items numbers 1 through 10?
I do not.
Councilmember O'Neill?
I'd like to note an abstention on item 7.
Councilmember Dixon?
I have no items, thank you.
Councilmember Blom?
I have a conflict on item number 4 due to real property interests and business interests.
Councilmember Duffield? Mayor Pro Tem Muldoon?
Yes, I have a couple items. Mr. Mayor, may I just ask a quick clarifying question of the city attorney about item number 3? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, on this issue, asking additional questions from the dais that pertain to A1 items placed on a future agenda. I just want to be sure that that is a question asked from the dais as opposed to a written submission, simply because I know and become a war of paper, if you will, or questions before the meeting.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. The intent is to basically allow council members at the meeting to ask a few short clarifying questions if they have questions about the item, not for, written interrogatories to be served on a
Perfect,
council
yeah.
member.
Just like what you saw what I did a bit ago. Thank you so much, Mr. City Attorney. And then I'd like to lodge a recusal due to a business conflict on item number 8, due to potential position advising a telecommunications company, although this does not say telecom undergrounded, it does say communication underground. I just want to be cautious on that. And that's all you
Thank
have for
you.
me.
Great.
Mayor,
Yes.
Oh, I just want to be sure, I don't know if the memo got out, so we are pulling item number 6, the employment agreement. It's no longer needed, so that item is removed from consent calendar.
Thank you.
And there's also a clarification to the resolution on item number 5.
Yes, I'm
And
gonna make
amendments
those
to
in my
minutes.
motion.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Great.
Ready to go?
Yes, I am. Mr. Mayor, I have a motion. I would like to move the balance of consent calendar, items 1 through 10, with an amendment to the minutes on item 5 and item 6 pulled by staff. A no vote on item 6 by myself. No, I guess scratch that. Don't worry about that one. Recuse on item 4 by Councilmember Blom and item number 8 by myself, with an abstention on item number 7 by Councilman O'Neill.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we will now hear public comments from those in the council chambers. And if you called to speak in on this item, you are up next. Know that if you are watching via the internet or NBTV, there is a 30-second delay. Therefore, please listen through your phone for the go-ahead to begin speaking. If you do not respond promptly, we will go on to the next caller. For the near term, we will be hearing from this room. Okay. Do we have any public comments? Okay. Any phone calls? Any additional council comments? All right.
We need a second, Mayor.
We,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, please vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay, we'll now hear public comments from those in the council chambers. If you've called to speak on this item, these are on consent calendar items, please come forward. Any public comment on consent calendar?
I think it's for non-agenda items
Not,
at this time, yeah.
Correct.
right. Okay, seeing none?
And we also, just in case, if you can check with the community room. We have people
Do
in
you have
there.
anybody in there?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Scott Carpenter. I am the owner of iTrip Vacations. I have some comments, but also they should be taken as a question to the Council. I'm just wondering why the ban on the short-term rental permits from the emergency ordinance that was passed well over a year ago hasn't been rescinded or considered to be rescinded by the Council, especially when you consider that here in Orange County, we're in the orange tier. In fact, some of our metrics are now in the yellow tier, that our governor is calling for a broader reopening of the state in June. That California ranks only behind Hawaii in terms of COVID-19 statistics. The city, the county, and the state are definitely pushing for reopening. In fact, Disneyland is going to be opening in just a couple of days. Moreover, here at the city, we have made significant headway with short-term rentals. We have a cap of short-term rental permits at 1,550. We brought some clarity in the last month or so as it relates to short-term rentals on Newport Island. We've implemented a hotline, and I've heard from a couple of residents near my rentals that it's working very well. Most importantly, I think, we've hired 2 part-time code enforcement officers that are focused on short-term rental permits, and I can tell you that they've definitely been doing their job. And then it just feels like at this point in time, using COVID as the reason for not starting to issue those permits doesn't seem logical. It just does not feel like it's passing the reasonability test. More importantly, it is starting to hurt some of our families that are residents. It's also starting to hurt some of the businesses financially. Some of us would really like to take part in the recovery, but until we're allowed to issue a couple of more short-term rental permits, it's going to be very hard for some of the families to survive financially as well as some of the businesses. So my question is, why haven't we had any conversation about rescinding that one piece that was left from the emergency ordinance that was passed over a year ago? Those are my comments. It's also a question. Certainly open to any comments or feedback if the council has some.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment on non-agenda items? Any phone calls? Okay, now we're moving on to our first public hearing. This is the public hearing is a resolution number 2021-35, Community Development Block Grant, and the annual action plan. And I believe council's read the action plan. And do we want a staff report? Anyone? Nope. Okay, no questions? All right. So if we will run to public comments here, and if anyone has public comments or is called to speak on this item, we'll hear it now on the resolution for the next year's Community Development Block Grant funds. Any calls? Okay. Ms. Dixon has a question.
I just want to say thank you to staff. Really did a good job in identifying agencies that will help homeless in our city. It's the first time we've been talking about these grants for a long time, and most of the money that goes to other parts of Orange County, which I'm sure was received well. But I'm glad to see that we're redirecting some of these funds to Newport Beach. So thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no further comments, I'll close the public hearing. And do we have a motion and a second? You have a second? I'll second. Okay, Mr. Muldoon and Mr. Duffield, opposing and seconding. Do we have a vote? Let's vote.
The motion carried unanimously, 7-0.
Thank you. And we're on to item number 12, and this is a public hearing, resolution number 2021-36, call for review, Planning Commission's approval of a mixed-use project at 2510 West Coast Highway.
Excuse me, Mayor.
We have some
I
recusals?
have to recuse myself on this item as I have a business within 500 feet. It's actually less than 30 feet, so I can't get out of that. Thank you.
All right.
I also have a recusal, real property interests and business interests within 500 or 1,000 feet of one, 500 of another.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so as some of you know, this project went through the Planning Commission, and then due to the concern of residents in my district and elsewhere in the city, I elected to bring the item to council for a hearing. And so, do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor Avery. I'm Simone Georges, Community Development Director. I just wanted to introduce Matthew Schneider. He's the principal planner who worked on this project. He'll go ahead and make that presentation. Jim Campbell, the Deputy Director, is here. He has a lot of knowledge about Mariners Mile, and I'll be here to support Matt and Jim also. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to
Thank you.
Matthew.
Good evening, Mayor Avery, council members, Matt Schneider, Department of Community Development. The call for review before you is for a project located at 2510 West Coast Highway. It consists of 35 residential units, 3 of which are affordable, and an 11,266 square foot boutique auto showroom. There were 5 entitlement applications associated with the project, and I'll discuss those in more detail in my presentation. The project is located, as indicated, in the Mariners Mile neighborhood of the city. It is a through lot with frontages on both West Coast Highway and Avon Street, and it's located just east of Tustin Avenue. The city's general plan designates the property as mixed use horizontal 1, and the zoning code designates the property as mixed use Mariners Mile. The general plan and zoning code both allow mixed use development on the subject site. The mixed use Mariner Mile zoning allows for a variety of uses, including multifamily residential, vehicle sales, marine services, office and retail uses. The residential component of the project is required to be set back a minimum of 100 feet from West Coast Highway, and the residential units have to be located above the ground floor. These site photographs give a perspective of the existing condition on site. The upper photo is taken from West Coast Highway, the lower photo from Avon Street. The site was previously used for marine sales, and it's vacant as of January 1st of this year. The project totals approximately 45,000 square feet in total development. The commercial component of the project consists of a boutique auto showroom with office space. The residential component is 3 stories in size, 58 ground level parking spaces on the first level with 2 levels of residential above. And again, there are 3 units designated for affordable housing. This site plan gives a bird's eye view of the project site. The commercial component is highlighted in yellow. The residential component highlighted in blue. And driveway access is provided off of both West Coast Highway and Avon Street, highlighted in green. Here's perspective from the front of the property on West Coast Highway, looking at the commercial portion of the project. A different vantage point that includes the driveway access. And a third perspective, this is from Avon Street that looks at the residential component of the project. The project's been described as a California coastal architecture. It uses earth tone colors, subtle articulations, and a variety of materials in its finishes. Looking closer at the floor plan for the commercial component, again, it's largely composed of the auto showroom. However, there is a 750 square foot office area with approximately a 1,500 square foot mezzanine above. The residential consists of 2 floors in the second and third level above ground level. The floor plans largely mirror each other. However, there are 18 total units on the second level, 17 total units on the third level. There are 2 lobby areas on each floor to access the elevator and stairways. And there's an open central courtyard that runs through the building. There's a roof deck provided atop the commercial component of the project. It's accessed through an upper story bridge to the residential portion of the project. It provides common open space, and it's intended for passive recreational use. A total of 58 parking spaces are provided on a ground level parking lot. Again, the residential can be accessed through the 2 areas highlighted in blue. There are designated trash enclosures, one for commercial, one for residential. I should note that the residential parking requirements are prescribed by state density bonus law, and the auto showroom parking rates were established by parking demand evaluation. I apologize.
Mr. Mayor, could we stop there for just a second? Oh, were you're about to explain the second statement about the parking?
I was going to break down the requirements in a little bit more detail.
Thank you.
Sure. So my apologies, this is a little wordy, but just to go over the requirements, state law prescribes the parking requirements for the residential component. So in terms of studio and 1-bedroom units, 1 parking space is required per unit. In terms of 2-bedroom, 1.5 parking spaces is required per unit. No guest parking is required under state density bonus law. In terms of the commercial parking requirements, we rely on the Newport Beach zoning code. The general vehicle sales parking ratio is 1 space per 1,000 square feet of lot area. We do not have a specific boutique auto showroom parking ratio. The applicant has requested a parking waiver, or a reduction, I should say. They completed a parking demand study. The study looked at 3 similar-sized appointment-only boutique showrooms for auto. They established a parking ratio, and they determined that 13 parking spaces would be needed to meet peak demand for this project, and 14 are provided. Elevations of the project, West Coast Highway on the left, Avon Street frontage on the right. The maximum building heights are called out in red font. Elevations from the side. The upper elevation is the view as if you were standing on Tustin Avenue, looking towards the project. The bottom elevation is the opposing view. As I mentioned, the project qualifies for a density bonus. It provides 3 very low income units. Those units would remain rent restricted for a minimum of 55 years. Under state density bonus law, the project is eligible for 2 incentives that would result in identifiable cost reductions. In this case, the project applicant has requested 1 incentive. It's related to the distribution of the affordable unit mix, which would call for 2 studios and 1 one-bedroom unit to be affordable. The project is also eligible for development standard waivers. Development standard waivers can be applied to standards that would physically preclude the development of density bonus units. They have requested 1 waiver to allow a maximum height of 35 feet. Project includes a tentative parcel map. The site consists of 5 separate parcels. The map simply consolidates them into 1 lot, 1 parcel, I should say. I should note that Avon Street, which is adjacent to the site, is somewhat unique. It's not a standard city right-of-way. It's actually composed of 5 individual parcels that are owned by the city and zoned public facilities. And the project has a access easement agreement to utilize Avon. Project is located in the coastal zone outside the appeals jurisdiction. A coastal development permit is required. Due to its inland location, there are no impacts to public coastal access. No coastal resources have been identified on the project site itself. The closest public view is to the north at John Wayne Park. The applicant has prepared view simulations. These are taken from John Wayne Park at a lower elevation just adjacent to the site. The upper image shows the existing condition. The lower image shows the simulation with the proposed project. While the image does show development in the foreground, overall, the harbor and view beyond remain intact, and Coastal and the Planning Commission both concluded that there was not a view impact proposed from the project. It's my understanding that the project applicant has additional view simulations that they'll share as part of their presentation. Project requires a conditional use permit. It's required for the vehicle sales use itself, as well as the parking reduction of 29 spaces. As I mentioned, they did conduct a parking demand study. Concluded 13 spaces would be needed to meet peak demand. Conditions of approval have been incorporated to address the operations of the vehicle sales use. The city's traffic phasing ordinance is what the city utilizes to have a set of standards for evaluating traffic impacts from development projects. Projects that generate 300 average daily trips or less are not required to complete a traffic study and are exempt from the provisions of the traffic phasing ordinance. In the case of this project, the traffic engineer reviewed the project and estimated it'll have 295 average daily trips. Therefore, a traffic study was not completed. The Housing Accountability Act applies to this project. The city is required to follow specific procedures and required to make specific findings if they wish to deny or reduce the density of the project. I should note the Housing Accountability Act does not relieve the project from complying with the Coastal Act. The project will need to comply with the standards of both acts. CEQA review was completed. The project qualified for an infill Class 32 exemption. Air quality studies, noise studies, preliminary water quality management plan did not identify any significant impacts. Planning Commission voted to approve the project 5-1 with one commissioner absent on February 18th of this year. And as Mayor Avery noted, a call for review is filed on February 22nd. Staff is recommending the council conduct a public hearing, find the project exempt from CEQA, and adopt a resolution approving the entitlements associated with the project. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Do we have any questions from council? All right.
Mr. Mayor, what's the procedure going to be? Will the applicant and
Yes.
and then someone from the opponent be able to come up and talk?
Yes.
Okay.
So we want to hear from them?
I was actually kind of curious. So we received a letter from Deborah Rosenthal. Is Miss Rosenthal? Oh, good. I had a few questions for you, but I'll ask them later then. All right. Thank you.
Okay, is the applicant here? Great.
Mayor Avery, honorable council members, Sean Matzler with Cox Castle Nicholson on behalf of the applicant, Mark Machady and his entities. We have a presentation to go through tonight. I'll try to get through it quickly. I know you have a lot of speakers behind me, so I want to be respectful of the council's time. Staff did a great job, and I want to thank them for their diligence and effort here over the last 18 months or more on this project. So the project features here, this is a redevelopment of a former marine sales facility and outdoor storage yard. As Matt said, there are two interconnected structures. The front is the boutique auto, and the rear is the 35 units of residential. What I want to point out about the commercial is that in this general plan designation, we can't really do less commercial. In order to do a mixed-use project and have residential, we need to have a minimum FAR of commercial, and that's about where we're at. So if we wanted to do 3,000 square feet of commercial, for example, we wouldn't be able to have the residential units behind it. Also want to point out some operational restrictions associated with the auto boutique. It operates by appointment only. There won't be any repair services. Vehicles won't be stored outside. There's no test drives. It really will feel more like a gallery than a vehicle sales facility. The affordable housing program that we're proposing here, again, it's 3 of the 35 units will be reserved for very low income households. What that means as a practical matter is that the gross income can't exceed 80% of AMI. What it means as a very practical matter is that the affordable rents for a studio in this area are going to be $782, give or take. It changes annually. And for one bedrooms, it's just under $900. So this could be a server or somebody who works at the BMW dealership nearby could easily afford one of these units. And I think that would be a great addition to the neighborhood. The building design, it is a California coastal modern architecture, and part of what it was modeled off of was the Quay Work project, which is being redeveloped right now across the street from the BMW dealership. I may be mispronouncing that. But that also has sort of a modern aesthetic, and we like that. We wanted to emulate that. So what you see here is sort of an undulating roof, looks a little bit like a wave, not as big as the ones at the Wedge. Some wood, some glass, and some siding. We've revised the project a couple times before the Planning Commission hearing. I want to just flag those revisions for you. First, in January of this year, we brought down the height of the residential to exactly 35 feet. That 35 feet height, by the way, is allowed in this zone. We also incorporated a wave design on the western elevation, which mirrors the opposite elevation. We brought down the height of some vegetation along Coast Highway. We added a green wall, which abuts the stairway on the exterior. That's on the Avon side. And we added permeable pavers on Avon driveway. And those, that vegetated wall and the pavers is shown in the picture on the upper, my upper right. We revised the project again just before the Planning Commission hearing, and that change was to respect the views from John Wayne Park. We brought the commercial structure down by over 5 feet to about 25 feet to that upper, to the upper edge of the parapet. I think staff showed a height measurement that was to the top of the stairwell structure. But for purposes of the views, what we realized is that this leading edge of the commercial structure, that was what was inhibiting the views the most. And so we were able to bring that down by 5 feet. For perspective, the Rolf's Wine sign, which everybody has seen, is on my left of this image, and it is well above what we're looking at for our building height. As staff said, and I just want to point it out again, when we started the project, the idea was to be consistent with the city's plans. So we started with the city's general plan, zoning, and LCP in mind. And as a result, we have a project that's consistent with the general plan, so there's no general plan amendments required. It's consistent with the LCP, there's no LCP amendment required, and it's consistent with the city's zoning code. So we try to stay within the box that the city has approved for this property. The project is also exempt from CEQA under a Class 32 exemption. We submitted numerous studies, and our environmental consultants here tonight to answer any questions about those studies regarding noise, air quality, and the like. So we've demonstrated that there's no substantial evidence that there's any exceptions that would put us out of a Class 32 exemption. The Housing Accountability Act does apply to this property because at least 2/3 of the project's square footage is going to be used for residential. So it applies to the entire project, not just the residential. We submitted a lengthy letter on this point in February 1st that I won't go over. But what that means for the city is that unlike almost any project that I've worked on in the city, the council's ability to condition or limit the project based on subjective criteria is limited. So the city can only reduce the project's density or deny the project if it finds that it will have specific adverse impacts on public health and safety. And we've seen no evidence of any such impacts, and nor has staff identified any. We prepared new view simulations at staff's recommendation following Planning Commission and in advance of this hearing tonight. These were prepared by a different consultant, a visual impact group. He has 30 years experience doing real estate visual simulations. He's available tonight if you want to ask him any questions. We took the photos from 3 viewpoints, and I had sent these to the council a week or 2 ago, and they're also included here. Only one of them was in staff's report. If you can see on the image on the screen right now, there's 3 red arrows, viewpoints 1, 2, and 3. And each of those elevations gets higher as you go. 1 is the lowest, 2 is a little higher, 3 is the highest. And these are generally where staff indicated where they wanted us to take the photos from. Viewpoint 1 is the one I think was in staff's report. Viewpoint 2 is the location from the last project that did a view simulation from this park, which was the Lido House Hotel project. And then viewpoint 3 is where I think a lot of people enjoy the park. How do you look at these view simulations? How do you, literally, how does the council look at these view simulations? How do you digest these? First is, what is the city's policy on public views? It's totally subjective, and that's what staff indicated in its report. There's no objective standards. And the reason why that's relevant is because Under the Housing Accountability Act, you can't deny the project or reduce its density on subjective criteria. Can the building be lowered? We looked at this. Staff pushed us on this. The building was already lowered 5 feet, the commercial, as I indicated below. We submitted a memo from our architect, who's available tonight, that talked about the infeasibility of further reductions for a lot of technical reasons that they can get into. We also looked at subterranean parking at one point and realized that that would result in significant short-term construction impacts, particularly to the adjacent childcare center. Next question, are the view simulations accurate? They're very accurate. And as I mentioned before, the principal of the firm that did the simulations is available tonight and can answer questions about the technical methodology that he used to create those view simulations. Final question is, how has the city looked at this before? What's the city's precedent for considering view simulations in the past? I found one recent one, Lido House EIR. It was about 7 years ago. There was one view location, which was the midpoint view of the 3 that were shown on the last slide. The city found that there was no impact. And if you look at that, if you look today from that vantage point, you'll see that Lido House sticks up about 1.5 floors above the buildings in the foreground. I'm going to fly through these because I'm hoping that you've seen them in my packet, but this is the first view simulation that we prepared. So these are 3, it's the same view 3 times. Top is existing conditions, the middle is proposed project, and the bottom, which is probably the most illustrative, is sort of a ghost of the outline of the building and the project's vegetation set against the existing. And so I think on that bottom view, and especially this view, because it is the lowest view and the most, where there's the most impingement on the bay, you almost want to zoom in on it, but I can't. But you can see that white line on the bottom view, where that covers the water. That's the view impact that we're really here tonight to talk about, I think. The next view location number 2, there's no impact to the water view. This is the middle view. Again, this is the view that was used in the Lido House Hotel. Lido House did not use that bottom low view that I just showed you. Last view location is view location number 3. This is from the lawn area closest to Cliff Drive Park. Again, no impact to the water view. There's been a lot of community correspondence on this, and I want to respond real quick to the ones that I've seen so far, and I'd certainly appreciate a few minutes at the end of the presentation by the neighbors to rebut to any additional things that I hear. The first is about the public views and the view simulations. We saw some view sims prepared by Protect Mariner Mile that were inaccurate by 7 to 8 feet in height, and that does not accurately represent the project. Questions about community compatibility. We thought that starting with a project that complied with the general plan, the zoning code, and the LCP would be a good way to ensure community compatibility. That's what we did. Impact on the marine industry. Bayport Yachts is the former tenant. They've already moved. They wanted a smaller site, and they've relocated in the city. Environmental review. Again, we've done noise, air quality, and greenhouse gas studies prepared by Urban Crossroads, our CEQA consultant. Representatives from Urban Crossroads are here tonight and can answer questions. Questions about whether or not there's a height variance. There's no height variance. None of the requests were for a variance. 35 feet is allowed in this zone with an entitlement. Questions about whether to be rooftop air conditioning units and solar. No, neither proposed. Questions about whether or not there's been a parking analysis prepared. Urban Crossroads prepared a parking analysis in conjunction with City Public Works, and that's how we ended up at the or the parking rate that's used in for the project that was presented by staff. And then finally, questions about traffic. I thought it was illustrative that relative to the prior boat sales use, this project would result in a net increase of just 8 a.m. peak hour trips and 13 p.m. peak hour trips. We also had traffic modeled based on other permitted uses on the property, like a medical or dental office building, which would result in more than twice as much traffic as our project. So with that, again, I'm here tonight, the attorney for the project, the applicant, Mark Machady, is here, the architects with West Group Design are here, Bill Lawson with Urban Crossroads is here. Dan Dell with MJS is here to discuss any landscape features, and Brent Chase with Visual Impact Group to discuss the view simulations. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. O'Neill.
So, Mr. Massar, when I was looking at the last slide, when you were going through the questions, and you had mentioned one of the questions was, the second to last one, I guess, the community questions.
About the parking analysis?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to preview for Ms. Rosenthal some of my questions. So
Okay.
there you go. But so have you had a chance to look at Ms. Rosenthal's letter that she sent to us?
I did.
So my understanding of reading her analysis was not that there wasn't a parking study performed. I think that they agree that there was a parking study performed. What I'm trying to understand, a handful of things. So one of the contention, and I'm going to, for this purpose, I'm only going to talk to her points made about the parking, not about CEQA and other issues. But when she's talking about the parking issues, the point, that, as I understood it, trying to be made is that under the Housing Accountability Act, first off, are we able to analyze, and this is a legit question, I'm trying to figure this out, are we able to analyze the parking requirements for the commercial property separate and apart from the whole project? So if, for example, we came to the conclusion that the commercial property itself was underparked, does that get us out from underneath the analysis on the Housing Accountability Act?
Yeah, I mean, it's the answer is not to my benefit, but the right answer is that the request on the parking reduction is separate from the Housing Accountability Act argument. So it's a separate request, we're saying, to approve a parking rate for this boutique auto sale use because the city didn't have one before. So we went through the effort of preparing the study. So that's a separate study from the Housing Accountability Act or the density bonus arguments.
And so isn't that her point, though? I mean, and that's why I'm trying to get to the heart of the discussion here, which is I think her argument, as I understood it, is exactly what you just said, which is the discussion on the parking reduction, or at least the approval of the discussion. So I'm looking at Exhibit C, which was the Urban Crossroads, and the Urban Crossroads is the study, is the parking demand and evaluation.
Right.
And that's where we got to the point of being able to address the number of parking units or the parking spaces that would be required for the commercial building.
Right.
Yeah. And so as I understood her argument in the letter that she was sending, is that if the commercial building itself, separate and apart from the housing, is underparked, and the study is wrong, and the analysis up here gets to the point of agreeing that it's wrong, then the Housing Accountability Act demands, which are the, sorry, I have my notes somewhere, making the pretty aggressively onerous findings of specific adverse impact.
Right.
We don't have to make those findings if we can separate out the commercial parking requirements.
I think the city could say that the parking study was inaccurate. I haven't seen any evidence to that effect. I'd also note that the parking summary that was presented earlier today, I think it was off by a few spaces for the residential, because the parking rates for the residential, the affordable residential, they were decreased on January 1st of this year. So a 2-bedroom went from 2.0 to 1.5, which nets us maybe an additional 4 spaces, which could be then applied to the commercial. I just mentioned that because it was a change in law and it wasn't reflected in some of the staff materials.
Okay, so my guess is that when Ms. Rosenthal comes up to speak, she's going to tell us that this study's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the analysis that we're supposed to provide in order to analyze this? I'm going to ask her the same question.
Yeah.
What is the proper analysis on this to figure out whether this parking study is correct or not?
I didn't see any evidence in her letter that the analysis was wrong. I saw evidence in her letter that she said, if in the future the use changes, you will be limited in the tenants that can occupy the site. And in all the work that I've done in the city, we park for the project. We don't park for a future use that might come in 10 years or 20 years with a different owner or a different tenant. We park for the project.
Okay. All right. I'm going to follow up with her on that series of questions, but I appreciate that. Thanks.
Sure. Ms. Dixon?
As long as we're talking parking, I'll follow up. I have a lot more questions, but one of the letters that were presented to us from residents was that the public parking lot on Avon is dependent upon to do overflow parking. Is that correct?
No, it's not
You're
correct.
not relying on the public parking?
Absolutely not. Can't do it in the city. We're not doing it. We can't do it.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And then back to the commercial use. The general plan, as you well know, requires marine services. Now, I don't know why Bayport can't stay there, maybe because this project was coming forward and you didn't renew their lease, whatever. I mean, is this really a commercial retail center, or is it just a museum for luxury cars?
No, it will be similar to like the McLaren dealership or some of the other high-end auto dealerships, which are popular on Mariners Mile. It's going to be sort of it's that kind of a thing where.
And has anybody estimated the sales tax
Not to my
benefit
knowledge.
the city?
Not to my knowledge.
Because is this really a retail car sales
Yes,
enterprise?
it is.
Well, I'll be interested to follow up on that. Also, the general plan goes into great detail in terms of compatibility with neighboring residents. How do you describe how this project is compatible with the adjacent neighborhood?
Permitted under the general plan. I mean, this was the kind of use that was contemplated in this area of
But
the
no,
city.
the general plan specifically talks about aesthetic and just
I'm
the
sorry.
design elements that would be complementary to the immediate adjacent neighborhood.
So the idea was that it's a more modern aesthetic, right? It is not Nantucket or Lido House.
But the entity that you described across the street, the Key or Quay,
Right.
whatever, that's not adjacent to the residence. So I'm trying to understand the intent of the architectural design not to be compatible with Mariners Village. The concept in the general plan specifies pedestrian walkways and access and ease and a village. We've talked a lot today about a village. Please tell me how this design comports to the village aesthetic.
We have ample setbacks. It's pedestrian facing with ample glazing on the front. It's landscaped, and then we bring the residents to the streetscape by this roof deck, this roof feature above the commercial, which we think activates the street in a nice way. Relative to what's there now, I think it's quite an improvement.
Well, I guess that's subjective.
It is.
I really don't see the nautical, even contemporary nautical flavor of the design. And then the box-like structure, putting aside whether it is obstructing anybody's view, but the interior, you do have your landscaping or greenery in the inside, but it's not evident on the outside. I mean, it's this box.
I'm the lawyer.
All right.
We can get.
Anyway, I'll get to that later.
There's a lot of landscape and design professionals here.
All
who
right.
Can
I
answer.
just I'm concerned that the non-compliance with our material specification is apparent due to the information in here. When the general plan requires authentic materials, quality materials, and in the specifications of product, it's wood-like, WOOD-like materials. So these are synthetic substitutions to appear to be natural wood or stone, and they're synthetic. Anyway, I'll bring that up later. It's just these are part of a long list of objective standards that we have in our general plan that the reason you're up here discussing the general plan is you say it's in full compliance. I don't see that compliance, but to be continued. I'll talk with the architect and the landscape people
Okay.
later. Okay.
And in terms of materials, we never got any feedback from staff on anything out of compliance with our material selection. But that's a discussion we can have.
I mean, it's not in compliance. So anyway, we could talk about that later. Okay. I mean, because there are artificial materials. Somewhere here, I've got it flagged.
Ms. Brenner? Oh, sorry. Are you?
Okay, it says wood look, metal siding, wood, that's not what we do when we're talking about quality materials. We're simulating wood.
I'd venture that most of the projects that I've done in the city include synthetic or faux materials. I could go back and check, just because that becomes a standard, they're more durable.
Okay, anyway, that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Ms. Brenner?
I just have one quick question. Did you contemplate the idea of requesting a general plan amendment? When I spoke with the property owner, he and I've worked with him before, and I really like him. And in Corona Del Mar, he's doing quality work, and he said that he would have loved to do lofts there, but that because of the commercial requirement, that was not a possibility. And the other thing that he mentioned was that he would like to have done a coffee shop rather than this big commercial boutique auto. Did you contemplate perhaps doing a general plan amendment request and altering those to be more village-like?
We did, and what that would mean for this project, if we did that, would mean a longer city process. It would mean potential exposure to green light, and it would mean an LCP amendment. So I think when we started out, we thought, why don't we conform with the city's general plan, and understanding that there's concerns about materials, but the uses and the density and setting back 100 feet, why don't we conform with the general plan and the LCP, which was just certified? Because that seems like a really good start, as opposed to deviating from the outset to try to achieve something that may or may not be successful. But that would add a couple years to the process.
This has been pretty lengthy anyway.
I know.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. I just wondered about that because it seems like that would have, a couple of those things would have been more attractive to the community. So I just wondered whether you contemplated that.
Yeah, it's, okay.
Any other questions from council? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll now hear public comments from those in the council chambers. And after that, we'll go with the phones.
Good evening. As you probably could tell by my raised hand, I'm Deborah Rosenthal, and I'm here representing the Coalition to Protect Mariner's Mile. The coalition has prepared an organized presentation, which they asked me to introduce by summarizing some of their concerns, and also, fortunately, to be available to answer questions. And I am very pleased. I always wonder if letters that I send in get read, and I'm very glad that all of you are hard at work on this important issue. Most of the people here this evening from the coalition want to be talking about visual impacts and, to a lesser extent, traffic. The coalition is happy to see housing at this location, but they don't think it should be housing that is built at the expense of existing residents. And there are just a lot of concerns that they're going to have. We believe that the fundamental problem here is something Mr. Matchler alluded to, which is there is a requirement for a minimum size of commercial, and there is a desire to maximize residential. And this site, just slightly less than an acre, is really too small to do both of those things with while providing for adequate parking. And the size of the project causes the height and the view issues, and it also causes what I talked about in my letter, and what I want to talk about was some problems with the commercial building. And I should mention that although I'm not a practicing planner, I practice as a land use attorney, I am a certified planner and a fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners. So I'm speaking partly as an attorney, but also partly for many years working as a planner. And in this particular case, the commercial is going to require a conditional use permit. It's an 11,000 square foot boutique auto showroom which needs approximately a 70% reduction in parking, at least based on what was in the staff report. So it will have 13 spaces instead of the 43 spaces that would ordinarily be required. And when I talk about my concerns, a conditional use permit requires findings about how it supports the orderly growth of the city, that it is safe for people. And this is a project where the housing section, at least, is intended to last for 55 years. And this auto showroom, we think, will be basically a white elephant almost by the time it's built. It really is designed because the applicant has a passionate interest in cars and apparently is very interested in that. But it puts the building and the site in a planning straitjacket. If the council looks at the conditions of approval, it really can't be used for virtually anything except a boutique auto showroom that generates almost no traffic. So if in 5 years, and remember it's a 55-year project, if in 5 years there's a proposal to use it for something else, or if the tenant decides to go out of business, the city doesn't have any ability to require that a boutique showroom stay in business here. So we think that this doesn't meet, even though it may provide enough parking for this extremely specialized niche use. It prevents this property from having really any flexibility to respond to market conditions. I'm also somewhat concerned and a little confused that this is not really an independent commercial building. As the council heard, there's going to be, the apartments will go on a walkway to use the rooftop deck, which basically requires that building to be maintained. I also was somewhat surprised to read that in the staff report that there will be a communal dining area, a fireside lounge, and outdoor recreation at the commercial building, which seems as though it seems unlikely that that's supporting a boutique auto showroom. But it would very much be a support function for residents. So we think that this is asking for a problem. It's really creating a problem, both for the residential project, which could very well wind up with a vacant building in front because of the straitjacket on the conditions, and also a problem on the Mariners Mile streetscape, which I know is highly prized by the city and is part of an important visioning process. So as Mr. Matzler agreed, this parking reduction is not required by the Housing Accountability Act. I went back and looked at subsection P, and it doesn't apply to commercial reductions of this type. And in our view, going from 43 spaces to 13 spaces really does not support use of this site for housing. So I'd like to answer any questions if there are some. And I also would like to introduce the next speaker, who's Mr. Patrick Gormley. Councilmember O'Neill, did I answer all of your questions? Any of your questions?
Almost. Yeah, so first off, welcome to Newport. We do read the lawyers' letters. So so I want to come back.
That's not true in all cities.
No, I've met a lot of council members in other cities, I'm aware. So what I'm going to say, though, is, what I'm trying to understand, and I'm probably going to come back and ask Mr. Matzler this too, when we're trying to work through, this law is incredibly complicated, and so I appreciate the ability to kind of work through some of these issues while we're trying to work through the Housing Accountability Act issues. So one of the things that I'm trying to understand, and I think Mr. Matzler and I were talking about splitting out, for parking purposes, the discussion between the commercial and the residential. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was so there's a term, and I want to make sure I get this correct. There's a term in the Housing Accountability Act, the phrase housing development project. And when that phrase is used in the Housing Accountability Act, it's used as just one project, and it contemplates the use of mixed use. And so I didn't see in the Housing Accountability Act a way to split out the commercial versus the residential the way that your letter has laid out. And so that's why I want to make sure I'm trying to understand, when we look at the Housing Accountability Act and we're looking at that omnibus phrase, housing, I apologize, I need to get this right, housing development project, because the Housing Accountability Act contemplates just one project, how do we split out the parking requirements on the commercial versus the residential?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
that
All right.
absolutely made sense. And this is both an incredibly complicated law and a new law. So I must say I'm glad I wasn't the city staff needing to review this for the first time with a brand new law of this complexity. I went back to look at exactly that question. And what the Housing Accountability Act does is it says, yes, we will apply our requirements to housing projects, which are development projects, which are 2/3 or 3/4 or whatever it is, residential. And the Housing Accountability Act says to the city, thou shalt not apply your normal parking standards to a project that comes in under the Housing Accountability Act. So the density bonus, I think it's 65915, the density bonus section says you get this much of a density bonus, and also says you will apply these parking requirements to the residential units. It says very specifically that those parking reductions, which are mandatory, apply only to residential units. There is no requirement that I can see, and I think Mr. Matzler agreed, no requirement under the HAA that the city approve a parking waiver for the commercial section of the project. So it's not breaking the parking out in the sense of splitting the project. What it says is the city has its parking requirements, and it can apply its normal parking requirements to the commercial section of the property, it cannot apply anything except the special rules to the residential section. And so that's why we think that it's very important for the city to consider when it looks at a conditional use permit for a long-term use. I mean, this isn't a building that's going to go away tomorrow. It really is setting a precedent for Mariner's Mile. So that the city needs to be looking at whether it wants to give a 65 or 70% reduction in parking based on this kind of highly specialized proposed use for a building that is going to probably go through 5 or 6 or 7 market changes and won't have the ability to do that because it's so underparked. So does that help the? I've spent way more time than I like rereading the Housing Accountability Act, and it's hard work getting through it.
Yeah, no, I think that helps. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Gormley?
Wait a minute, I do have one further
certainly.
clarification. Just to follow up on that, very good questioning. So if I'm trying now to synthesize that into my thought process. So what you're saying is because we are accommodating the parking requirement because of this specific unique type of commercial entity, that the parking waiver would not apply to a cafe, a coffee house, or something like that. And that would be, if we were to approve this project, the city is locked into a car museum forever for 55 years?
No, the city is not locked into that. As a matter of fact, the city would not be able to require that it stay a car museum. The problem comes that if a cafe comes in, and it's an 11,000 square foot building, it's not going to need 13 parking spaces for a cafe.
But they'll be required to provide those?
They will be required to provide those,
I see
or
that.
the building stays empty.
Ah,
I suppose it's possible they could buy, I don't know if their off-site parking is available to purchase, but I know at this location, it's going to be extremely expensive and people have to walk. So the city doesn't have the ability to lock in this single niche use. But because it's of the 13 spaces or 14 spaces and the conditions of approval, like locked door and only by appointment, there would have to be a change to the conditional use permit. And the number of uses that generate 13 parking spaces in an 11,000 square foot building, I don't even think I could count on this hand.
okay, thank you. And then something else you talked about, just explain to me again what you were saying, that this rooftop on the commercial building is really designed for the residential, or is there access across the roof? Or so what was your point?
What my point is, well, I really had 2 points. One is that the plan, as I understand it, is to rent out the commercial space, although it may be operated by this particular applicant. The building is designed, and it's not clear from the sketches, the elevations. The building is designed with a little aerial walkway that goes from the residential area over to the roof of the commercial. And I think it's about a I think it's about 3,400 square feet of turf and a place to go to sunbathe, that sort of thing. And what that means is that what happens at the commercial building actually has a fairly dramatic impact on the ability of the residents in the residential portion to have access to open space and to recreation, because that's the primary open space. There's a small pet relief area that I think was added at the Planning Commission's request.
So your point is that it's for the commercial use, but not for the residential use, even though there's access?
No. What my point is it's for the residences, but it's on the commercial rooftop.
That's not allowed.
Well, it ordinarily, as I understand it, it's intended to be an independent commercial commercial use. But I have not researched that area of the general plan. I was simply told that making them financially interdependent, which they definitely are, because of the rooftop use, and the fact that it's on a single parcel, is inconsistent with the goals of having commercial along the road and residential in the back. And then there's also the question that that confused me last evening as I was preparing for this hearing, that said, I believe it's on page 12 of the resolution, that this is that there will be a communal dining facility in the auto showroom, a fireplace lounge, and then exterior recreational area. And I have never actually bought a boutique car, but I would be surprised if communal dining and fireplace lounges are typically part of an auto showroom.
So I'll have to look at these plans again. So does the rooftop of the residential building provide these type of amenities, or they're going to have to walk over on that side alleyway to get over the roof?
Yes.
I see. Okay. All right.
I don't think it's an alley. It's
A alleyway, or just?
Oh, yes, it's like an aerial walkway.
Oh.
It's up several floors. You don't get there below, and you don't get there, as I understand it, through the auto showroom, which has to be locked anyway. But no, there are no recreational facilities on the residential, I'll call it an apartment complex, on the apartment complex roof. And the courtyard is not designed for that kind of use. It's basically a passageway. And so this is really as I understand it, the only area where the roof of the commercial is the only area that the residential tenants will be able to recreate.
I see. Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
If more questions come up, I'm happy to do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Actually, if I could jump in real quick, can I ask Mr. Matzler a quick question before you start with the presentation? Sure. Thank you. So Sean, if I heard you correctly, you're saying the Housing Accountability Act doesn't apply to the conditional use permit and the commercial request for a waiver of the parking?
We haven't made that argument, although in looking at it, not knowing this was going to be the issue tonight, it could be the case that we were able to qualify for a density bonus incentive. We have two density bonus incentives we can use. We've used one, right? That leaves one remaining density bonus incentive. It's not before you tonight because, again, I didn't think this was going to be controversial, but it could be the case that we could make the finding that we can use the second allowed density bonus incentive to waive commercial parking requirements.
I thought you were saying earlier, though, that the Housing Accountability Act didn't apply to the commercial.
Density bonus law is separate from the Housing Accountability Act.
But you don't think the Housing Accountability Act applies to it?
I don't, and I know that's against my interest, but I don't believe that that's what the law supports.
All right, thank you.
If I could just also, if the city attorney wishes to look back at the density bonus law, my understanding is that first of all, parking standards are objective standards, but also in terms of incentives, that there is a requirement that the applicant be able to demonstrate that that incentive is necessary to be able to provide the affordable housing. So there's an extra step in there that, because this is such a new law, I'm not aware that many cities have had experience with doing that with the density bonuses.
Well, good evening. I've been properly introduced. First of all, I don't know if you had an opportunity, but this is the packet of the material for tonight's hearing.
If you can speak into the microphone, please.
Oh,
Thank
this
you.
is the packet of material for tonight's deliberations. Now, I represent or am part of the people that make up Mariner's Mile. Let me see. Okay. All right. This is a view of the highway. And we have an interest in what happens on this highway for a variety of reasons, one of which is those abutting communities, as well as I live in Bay Shores. Our community has a very much interest in the way Mariner's Mile is built out over the next number of years. First of all, I want to also commend the mayor and the city council for taking up this issue tonight after the Planning Commission's approval. And we really do appreciate the effort and time you are taking to deliberate on this matter. The first thing is our coalition has about 1,200 to 1,400 members. And our primary are stakeholders, which are the peoples in the communities that border Mariner's Mile, the businesses, property owners as well as the business owners around Mariner's Mile, and some of the other communities. And our concern is Mariner's Mile going to continue the legacy that this community has built up for a number of years of having villages surrounding the bay, one of which is designated in the city's documents, in the plan, Mariner's Mile. The second thing is we are definitely pro-development. We do not want to see Mariner's Mile to continue to be the way it has been for all these years. And we have tried a number of attempts to correct the existing situation, and they have not gone through. We have, like Councilman Dixon mentioned, you have the Mariner's Mile plan and strategic plan. Okay. Nothing's actually resulted as a result of that. We have discussions on a bunch of other things. But the other thing is that we think a village design is what's best for Mariner's Mile, and we 100% support this process that the city went through for the Lido Marine Village. The second thing is, I think this indicates, and the things we've been hearing is, that there is a wide and growing concern about Mariner's Mile. And as these projects start being discussed, that concern is going to become greater. And I think it's really up to the council to come up with a vision for Mariner's Mile. And we do not have one. We have proposed a vision, we have articulated a vision, but one does not exist at this time. Secondly, we think that this project has and is going to take away public views that are protected. Two, we think it's not addressing the concerns about the number of accidents along Mariner's Mile that are going to be in this vicinity. Three, we think it endangers the children that travel through this area because they come down for guards, they go to school, they do other things. So we think there's a real concern about safety. But the other thing is, we don't think the design, the size of the structure, the box look of the structure, as well as the adverse impacts to the abutting communities is worth what's going to happen. Now, I don't know if you know Jody Bowe, who runs the Balboa Island Conservatory movement. Anyway, Jody wrote me this letter, and I'd like to read it because I think it really has something that the council really needs to consider. Your collective decision regarding the design direction and look of Mariner's Mile will have a potential a profound impact on the way Newport Beach is viewed nationally and internationally. Any large mixed-use project, such as the one currently proposed for Mariners Mile, will in fact set the precedent for all other developments in Newport Beach moving forward, and it will be used to justify similar undesirable projects. Secondly, the unintended consequences of this project in the minds of myself and Jody and other people is that it will affect the tourist and the businesses for generating income. And she puts in this email, which was sent to you today. I don't think any of you had a chance to read it. She ties it into what's called the 10 most beautiful cities in California, which is on the I'm not very familiar with these sites, but it's one of these sites that people post things on. And we're the first community listed in that 10 communities in Newport Beach is listed. So the only other thing I'd like to finish with this, give you these thoughts. You know, when the Planning Commission was considering this project, the community asked the Planning Commission and asked the city to provide a community outreach meeting to describe this project, to explain the various requirements by law, to understand the staff findings, which we do not understand, and to the recommendations they're making. And this request was denied by the city. I have no reason why. And the project, Mr. Marchetti and his attorney did provide a Zoom meeting, which was very helpful. And a number of questions were raised and had a lot of participation. So anyway, we think that this Mariners Mile should follow the design of Lido Marine Village. The city went through a very successful process. They talked about all the abutting areas. They got them all involved. They got them all participating, and they had design criteria specifically in there that everybody knew from the beginning what was going to be required. People don't know what's required in Mariners Mile. That's what you said, Councilman Dixon, in terms of the design. So we're asking three things, and that's our next question. Okay. We're asking the project be continued. Secondly, we're asking that the project be analyzed to preserve the views through the implementation of story poles, and be based on a view analysis that project the project be redesigned as required. That, I would like to finish with one thought, that we've had these views from these parks since the early 1900s, and I don't think anybody wants them to go away in any way, shape, or form. Secondly, there is a need for an in-depth traffic study that takes more than just this project in mind. It has to take the streets surrounding the project, and it has to take the impact on Pacific Coast Highway. And the last thing is, I'd like to introduce Peggy Palmer, who's going to discuss about the views from the park. And I really appreciate your time, and thank you again for taking the time to consider this issue.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Palmer, treasurer for Protect Mariners Mile. Awfully good one. Got Deborah Rosenthal on board, right? Watching those shekels. Anyway, I have something I was going to read here, but I wanted to say that Mr. Matzler came out of the gates and said our view simulations were incorrect, 7 to 8 feet off. To his comment, we have not done our view simulations 3 times. They have. We have done one view simulation from different areas, from our architect who will go over the analysis, 40 years in the business, 17 years working with the city of Newport Beach. So we feel very confident with our view simulations. Our view suggests that the applicant's 3 viewpoints, just 3 viewpoints, when this is John Wayne Park, this is a panoramic park. This park's delineation goes all the way down to Avon, and Avon is not a street, it's an alley. It's referred to as a driveway. At the bottom of that alley, guess what picks up all the people during the summer? The trolley. In a 23-foot wide driveway, and they're entering and exiting this area going to the city parking lot, and now you're going to have 35 residents car showroom in a 23-foot driveway, and people are traveling, pedestrians, bicyclists use this corridor, and this is an extremely hazardous driveway. Even Mr. Matzler referred to this as being the ingress and egress as the major project, when city staff referred to the ingress and egress off of Pacific Coast Highway. So we'd like to know exactly what's going on with this project, because we've got a lot of kids here. There's a lot of schools along Mariners Mile, sea-based schools, the sailing schools, the preschool is right next door. So we have some concerns about that. And restricting public views for public enjoyment, our guiding principles that are included in the general plan and the city's LCP as well, and Caltrans is a steward of this public park and its views, on Senate Bill 1467 and sections 260 through 263 on street highway. Existing law provides Caltrans with full possession and control of all state highways, public views, and John Wayne Park is one of those. The applicant had a choice to present a responsible project to the community, one that would maintain the environmental character of Newport Beach, one that community and guests would embrace and enjoy. However, he chose to present a product that creates more harm than good, and I think, and our coalition and 1,400 people that signed our petition feel that this is an embarrassment to the city. Lastly, I just want to let you know that the parking area, many people go there when they go to Hoag Hospital. They're coming from Inland Empire, Riverside, LA County. They park in this area to get a view of the tranquil bay before they go over and get their cancer treatments at Hoag Hospital. So with that, I'll end it. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Okay, if we can please keep our comments to the 3-minute period. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor Avery and council members. Thank you for bringing this up to I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? My name is Jim Carlson. I'm an architect. I'm a president of. I'm a chairman of the Coalition to Protect Mariners Mile. I'm also an architect, 45 years, design and construction experience. I've been licensed in the state of California for 38 years. I'm a resident of Newport Heights for 40 years, lived on the same street, Cliff Drive, in the same house. I have over 17 years working with the city of Newport Beach Planning and Building Department. In the last 13 years, I've been full-time doing my architectural practice, doing custom houses and major remodels. This is the view simulation that I had created, because the applicant's view simulation was not accurate. Oh, before I get there, I want to talk about this. I had my surveyor look at the maps online to determine whether this project was in the coastal zone, and we determined that it is. If you look at there, the numbers are quite small, but it's like 292 feet from the bulkhead to the property line. So in our estimation, this project is appealable to the Coastal Commission. This is the initial view simulation that the applicant submitted. You can see on the right that they didn't delineate the total building. We don't understand why, but this is the reason that we generated a view simulation and not just look at the applicants. This is what we saw. Totally I took a look at their plan, and we looked at the rooftop deck like they talked about. But the biggest thing they didn't do was the two elevator shafts. They don't delineate those above the roof line, and they would be required to be that. They also don't delineate the rooftop vents. I did an analysis of the apartments like that, and most of them will have one vent from the toilet and one vent from the sink, the kitchen sink. They also didn't delineate the kitchens in their floor plans for whatever reason, I don't know. But so there's going to be at least 70 rooftop vents, plus the two elevator shafts, plus they have two mechanical equipments on top of the showroom. Can I go on a little bit more?
Well, a minute, 1 minute.
Okay. The applicant's architect produced the 3 new view simulations, and the person who did those concluded that the view simulation from the lowest point is 5 feet. It obstructs the water views by 5 feet. The city staff has asked them to look at reducing the things, and they did not come up with a solution to do that. The applicant's letter said it would be a negative impact on the financial feasibility of the project, so that's why they can't lower the building. Apparently, they think that the public views from John Wayne Park should be given up so they can make more money. City staff has acknowledged that their findings were incorrect. As a result, the Planning Commission approval should be rescinded. This is the site. This is what this. We're asking for story poles. If they think my view simulations or our view simulations are incorrect, then have them provide story poles that are certified, that show all the aspects of the project. Our request is simple. This project should be continued. The project be analyzed for the preservations of all views. And based on the analysis, the project redesign is required.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Charles Cove. I'm a resident of Newport Heights and the president of the Newport Heights Association, our HOA. I'd like to change my speech briefly and mention that when the last general plan was implemented, the mixed-use horizontal and mixed-use Mariners Mile did not contemplate housing density bonuses or housing accountability acts. People have written to you asking you to continue this, in part because we're in the middle of a general plan update that's been hijacked by the housing element update. There's a good argument for looking at that because this is the beginning of more projects, I predict. So back to my talk. First, I would like to thank our 2nd District Councilman and Mayor Brad Avery for calling this up to be heard by the council this evening. This is the proper forum for a project with these implications to be heard. Thank you. There is near universal opposition to this project being approved as presented tonight. One, there is no reason to grant a parking reduction on the commercial component. If the developer fails to locate a suitable auto tenant and decides to pivot to a grocery market, they can apply for a new CUP and it will likely be granted with off-site parking. That's one of the things that Ms. Rosenthal brought up tonight. They have defined a use that was undefinable so they could create their own parking requirement. We think that's a travesty. Two, you've seen and read enough evidence tonight to find that this project does not comply with the local coastal program. The architect's memo says that the project can be lowered, but it states it would, quote, impact financial feasibility, unquote. Complying with the Coastal Act does not make the project unfeasible, just more expensive to build. Also, it should have had an EIR. Please vote to direct the applicant to return with a project that meets the requirements of the Coastal Act, does not require a parking waiver for the commercial component, and has an EIR. Thank you for your service.
Hi, my name is Kathy Shaw, and my husband and I live and run a business on Tustin Avenue, corner of Tustin and Avon. We've been involved residents and business owners since 1983. I'm here to speak about the incompatible architecture plan for Mariners Mile, specifically the property proposed for 2510 Pacific Coast Highway. The general plan for Newport Beach, approved in 2006, made it clear that anyone planning to enhance or rebuild their property would be held to a certain local standards and guidelines. We recently remodeled our home and our office building to meet the precise regulations of this plan for the common good of the community. Today, we find these local standards are being overpowered by the state. For years, my husband and I have attended many meetings and a charrette, which is a meeting of local stakeholders and experts from around the country. City planners came to this unbiased study of Mariners Mile to resolve conflicts and map out solutions. Together, we explored the potential and functionality of this aesthetically distressed area of Newport Beach. It was our hope that developers would see the potential of this maritime area as the charrette planners saw it, an area for the common good with shops and outdoor restaurants in a walkable, bikeable, and welcoming destination. We recently learned a development group was gradually buying up properties and creating the long-anticipated Harborside Walkway, and our hopes increased. We knew that the developers' plans would have some mixed use, but we assumed it would maintain the charm and character and timeless architecture, such as the recently renovated Lido Village. As city planners and neighbors alike, we all see that village communities are becoming more popular and therefore more valuable. Our local communities over the course of time have taken on their own village individuality. Places like Cannery Village is an artist community. Balboa Village has been great for kids, fishing, and tourism, and the hometown feel of Balboa has remained charming. Mariners Mile is also a village with its own unique maritime theme. The recent architecture, like the Key Works building on PCH, has shown that they are intent on keeping the integrity of the area to benefit the residents, visitors, business owners, the city, and the developers. When we first learned of the proposed development at 2510 PCH, we were surprised that this would be the first development by the group, which could set a precedent on the architectural style and lead to the completely inconsistent look for the future of Mariners Mile. Our mouths dropped open and our hearts sank. The proposed property is an uninspired box, too big, too dense for the area, and far from timeless. The proposed structure has zero maritime appeal and absolutely nothing to benefit the charm of this community. The concerned neighbors, the unbiased charrette, and surely the city planners must see that this proposed property would create a burden to Mariners Mile in terms of safety, parking, traffic, and be a radical departure from the years of work that developed the master plan. Just because a loophole or incentive has been offered by the state, it does not mean that this is the right thing to do for our city. We love Newport Beach, and we want to see it developed in a tasteful way that benefits everyone for many years to come. This should not be an argument against us and them. We all want this to be successful. I hope that developers listen to what we have to say for the success of all. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Slavica. I am a tenant at the 2400 West Coast Highway, 3 doors down south from the proposed project. I'm here on behalf of I've been on this location for over 4 decades. Many of you weren't even on this committee when we used to come to the meetings and discuss the issues about the safety that to us, all the business owners and employees of the businesses that we serve this community, it's kind of put away and almost feel kind of ignored. I'm not here to bash this project because these people, obviously, everything they presented tonight, it looks like it is, they put a lot of effort to do things, even though professionals know what is right, what is wrong, and they presented their issue. I'm here to talk about safety. Police department in the city has the records for the last 4 years, and every year we have 100 car accidents. They are reported to the city. Last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right in front of our building, we have a car accidents. We have cameras to prove it. Few years back, I recommended to the city when we had meetings, maybe it would be a good idea to build parking structures on the city property that is behind our property and kind of take the cars off the highway, because when the first lane, second lane let you go, the third one doesn't see you. We even have fatal accidents there. So tonight, by listening to this project and connection of the business part of the building with residential, with the rooftop, we know what happens to all the rental properties on Peninsula. Party Central. Are we going to create a rooftop party centrals? What are we going to do about the parking and all the guests that will be attending this property? Right now, every business building on our side is using, we're calling it an alley, we're not calling it a street. We are instructing every citizen of Newport Beach to use the alley to avoid Coast Highway turning in left to attend our building. By having 35 apartments, and we assume that everyone's going to have a partner, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, there will be approximately 70 cars. This project so far, I did not hear it has an adequate amount of parking for the guests. And where are they going to go? Well, the one gentleman presented, and he said that certain apartments have one parking space, 1.5. How do you get a 1.5 parking space? Do you cut your car in half, or you get a bicycle? So, like I said, I'm not here to bash this project, but this is like, I call a Cinderella story. You have the shoe, you try to have many women to fit in. So if the project is a different location, will be perfect. It just does not fit the location with the traffic.
Thank you.
Good evening, David Tanner. I've submitted extensive written comments previously. Hopefully you've got a chance to look at them. I don't intend to go over those again. I just want to give you some additional thoughts. The project commercial use contains a residential use, the rooftop deck, that's not allowed. The residential building has a flat roof, that's not allowed. The project impacts coastal views, that's acknowledged. Even after the building reductions by the project applicant, coastal views from public spaces, including parks. Yet, staff and the Planning Commission determined the project is consistent with the general plan, municipal code, and local coastal program, and there is no potential impact to marine uses, traffic, safety, visual, or other environmental concerns. That's what the staff report concluded. That's what you have before you tonight. Planning Commission approved the project. I was there. I spoke before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reasoned why bother. It's going to be appealed to the Coastal Commission. Let's let the Coastal Commission figure this out. The problem is the city reputation is on the line because the Coastal Commission approved the findings. They could have, as I've recommended to you, if they had questions of local coastal program compliance, ask the Coastal Commission for interpretations of those policies. But they chose not to. They just chose to push it on, and in so doing, they approved the findings. So that's luckily been appealed, so that does not go to the Coastal Commission. So now it's up to you to be the eyes and ears of the Coastal Commission and correctly interpret the local coastal program for this project. The Coastal Commission staff tells the city staff additional project design changes are required to maintain public views to achieve project consistency with the LCP. You've seen in the written comments, I've included quotes from the city's Coastal Commission contact person, a supervisor, senior person. This means the project as proposed is not consistent with the LCP. If additional design changes are needed, it cannot be consistent with the LCP. The proposed resolution and findings you have before you tonight are not accurate. The City Council must take into consideration public comments you've heard tonight and previously in the public record specific to CEQA concerns when deciding the appropriate CEQA document for the project. Specific CEQA concerns expressed by the public include visual impacts, impacts to community character, and public safety. These concerns are also related to project compliance with general plan and municipal code policies, and the LCP requires that the project comply with all, not most, but all general plan and municipal code policies. So it just misses one, and it's not consistent with the LCP. And it also requires that it be consistent with all LCP policies. So the way the city works, how do we get in this position? Well, we've gone through the staff and we've gone through the planning commission, and now it's before you. I'll wrap it up very quickly.
Very quickly, thank you.
Staff accepts an incomplete development application. I've explained how that is in my written testimony to you. And determines the project is consistent with the general plan, municipal code, and LCP. This project was introduced to the public on short notice, according to the rules, but short notice, 5 days, 6 days. That's all they got. Staff refused to meet and answer public questions after the applicant had a Zoom meeting. Staff wouldn't do the same. Staff tells the public the project is not appealable to the Coastal Commission. Well, you've heard that tonight. The Planning Commission, knowing the project will be appealed to the Coastal Commission if approved as proposed, does not evaluate the project and approves the project and its findings, as I've told you.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner.
And in concluding, just a couple of sentences, what the city's facing a mess, and what you need to do is make changes, in my recommendation, to the process and the way the project applications are evaluated. As future projects are brought forward, this is only going to get worse, and we've seen that tonight when you've heard testimony on the housing element. So look at the process, try and improve it so you don't end up in the same position again. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paula Castanon. I live on the top of Tustin Hill. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Mayor and council people and staff. My biggest concern is traffic. There are 9 stop signs in 600 feet on Tustin from the base to Cliff Drive going east, which indicates we are inundated with traffic. The city traffic engineer said that 70% of the traffic was going to access the complex by using Pacific Coast Highway. I find that very difficult to follow because the only way they would be able to access that would be in one direction. It means if they're going in the other direction, they have to get out in the middle of the intersection and cross over traffic, which doesn't make sense. We know they're going to use Avon. Avon is a very narrow driveway. The city's calling it a street. I doubt that, but be that as it may. I actually went out with my tape measure and measured the width of Tustin. Tustin is 27 feet, 7 inches. That means we have cars parked on either side of the street, and we have cars that go north and south. Unfortunately, cars can't go north and south. We have cars parked on either side. I read city planning. It said you need 20 feet, 10 and 10 for traffic up and down, and you need 8 feet on either side. The average car width is 6 feet. Obviously, if you do the math, it's far more than 27.7. So in order to negotiate that hill or come down the hill, if there are cars coming in the opposite direction, one has to pull off to the side. Hopefully they can find a parking space and wait, kind of San Francisco style, while the other one, or 2 or 3, come down the hill. We have a new generation of children on the hill. We have little kids. The stop sign, 9 of them, are consistently not used properly. We use the rolling stop. You cannot let a child anywhere near the street. You don't want them stepping their foot out in the street because you can't rely on the drivers to stop. Added to that are the pedestrians. It's a great hill to walk up and down. A lot of people exercise there. So there are no sidewalks and there are no streetlights. So cars and pedestrians, dogs, bicycles, little kids, they're all negotiating up and down this hill, and it's very difficult. Adding egress and ingress on Avon,
We know they're going to use that as a conduit to get to the other side of Tustin so they can get a straight shot to 17th Street, so they can circumvent Newport Boulevard, which is a highly impacted street. So they go up Tustin and they can make a left on 17th, or they can wait and go up to 19th or even Broadway and get right on the freeway. Anyone on our side of the bridge who's anywhere near there knows that you use that shortcut on Tustin because you can get there. If you're at the top of the hill and you look down and you see that traffic light is green, you're going to zip down there so you can make that turn.
Thank you for your
I
comments.
respectfully request that any accommodation be made to protect our people and especially our children. Thank you very much.
Mayor and council members, my name is Tony Shaw. I'm Kathy's husband. As we mentioned before, we live and work on the corner of Tustin and Avon. The more we got involved with understanding what was being proposed, the bigger the problem became and the more questions we had. We are not against development or mixed-use buildings, but how could they put 35 units on this parcel of land? How could they go so high? Another car dealership at Mariners Mile, Mariners Village? I thought it was Mariners. Our questions were answered when we heard about the low-income units being added for the incentive loophole. These incentives include the applicant is not required to provide adequate parking, which we've talked about tonight. They only need to provide one parking space per bedroom. I found out tonight it's less. So if the people are sharing a room, there's a potential for 70 cars, and they only have one parking space with no guest parking. We have 2-hour parking on our street because all the workers in the restaurants and businesses park on our street to go to work. At our own building in 124 Tustin, we purchase parking passes for each of the units every year. The problem is if they get to work after 8 a.m., the parking lot adjacent to 124 Tustin has been taken up by surrounding businesses, some as far away as Sterling BMW. If the vehicles park on the street, they must move their car every 2 hours during the weekday. Ultimately, whether you live or work in this area, there's not enough parking already. The standard shoreline height in our area is 26 feet or 29 feet with a peak, with a pitched roof, period. And this project is 30-foot high square box, which towers over the buildings in the area. The proposed project will block views from John Wayne Park. Therefore, we are requesting story poles be put in place so the public can see how huge this project is and what we will believe will block priceless views from John Wayne Park. The applicant should be required to conduct a traffic study. The amount of traffic that this will create on the Irvine Alley and PCH will be hazardous. We should also review the future development of the proposed Newport Village next door with the 2510 Coast Highway project to see what the traffic issues will arise. Over the next 8 years, Newport Beach must plan for 4,800 new dwellings, which essentially means if Senate Bill SB 9 is passed, a single-family home in Newport Heights can potentially be purchased and a fourplex put in its place. Unfortunately, the state wants to dictate how we run the city of Newport Beach. The 2006 general plan update is the foundation for our city, and we need to enforce it. We love living and working in Newport Beach and have worked extremely hard to establish ourselves in this special neighborhood. We have always done what's the common good of our community. We hope the development will do as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Oh, okay. Come on down.
Hi, my name is Sue Liao, and I live on Tustin Avenue. We'll make this very short and sweet. At a previous planning meeting, a traffic engineer said that there were only 35 accidents on and around PCH between Dover and Newport in the last 5 years. Today I received this. It states from the Newport Beach Police Department that in the last 4 years between Dover and Newport Boulevard, there's been 557 citations issued, and there's been 398 traffic collisions in the last 4 years as of today. I would like to ask the City Council to please ask the Newport Beach Police Department to give you a comprehensive study of the real citations and accidents on Newport, on PCH. Because if we're going to do any kind of housing on PCH, we've got to make sure that that traffic is taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right. Is Mr. Moschetti here? We have a phone call? All right, we'll take this call, and then Mr. Moschetti will come, if you could come up next. Hello, please go ahead. Hello, please go ahead. Okay. All right, sir.
My name is Mark Moschetti. I'm the owner of the property. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you for coming.
We started with this project 2 years ago with the city staff working through the requirements for redeveloping this property. And we looked at all of the requirements, and we went back and forth with the city staff many, many times. First thing that we did was we came up with a concept and asked the staff what is required from a parking perspective. And we did all the parking studies required to meet the requirements for what we have shown the staff and you guys tonight. The study went back a few times with the city staff, asking more and more questions to finally satisfy the requirements for what we were going to go build with regards to the auto showroom, which I intend to occupy myself for my business. Then we went through the study of what's required to build the apartment units and what the density bonuses are to be able to get to build something that's affordable. And that's what we've designed. As far as the size of the project is what it required to be able to fit the number of units that we had. With regards to the view simulations, there were some questions last time at the Planning Commission meeting, which we tried to address by doing additional view simulations, which are 100% the same as the previous ones, but they expanded the view. So they looked at not just a small view, they looked at the expansive view. And as you could see, the only view that's being missed from the park is a view in between the buildings that you could see from the park. The actual bay view and the ocean view is not at all changed. I don't know what you could do as a developer. The rules are what the rules are. We couldn't go build, a community type of setting because of the requirements for the amount of commercial you need to have to be able to qualify for the residential. This area is zoned for mixed use, which means you could build commercial and residential with all the requirements that exist with regards to the 100-foot setback, how much square footage you need to have to be able to qualify for residential. This is what you end up with when you set the rules the way you've set up the rules. So all we've tried to do as a developer is to follow the rules that are set by City of Newport Beach. And the plan, as we've worked with the city for 2 years, going back and forth with the design reviews, and you can ask your staff, we've tried to stay compliant. With regards to what the building looks like and what materials we use, we had a few different designs that we went and changed to meet the guidelines that are set by the city. If you're not satisfied with regards to the type of materials we've used, we can use natural materials as is called for, but that was not a requirement from the city staff to us. We've used something that would last a long time, which are, again, consistent with what the city has told us that we need to use. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment? There's two. All right. Are there? Okay.
As this calls for.
Hello. Please mute your device and go ahead.
Inconsistent with.
I believe he's still talking.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is Jody Bowl, and I would just like to make a few comments on this project, this mixed-use project. I understand that there's a lot of technicalities, but I believe the community, the feedback that I have received, and including myself, is that there is a huge aesthetic problem with this project. This does not represent nautical. It does not represent Mariner's Mile. It is not called Modern Mile. It is Mariner's Mile. And I do know that there were very limited meetings with the community for community input, and the community input during those meetings asked to make it very nautical, to have it be cohesive with the general plan, and this project is not cohesive with the general plan. This project represents something that looks more like the Inland Empire, maybe off of Highway 91. The design is a very inexpensive design. A box is a very architecturally inexpensive design, and also to build. It needs to be quality. Now, I don't know if you all received an email I sent out, but there was a recent social media platform that pushed out, and wait for it, to over 4 million users about the 10 most beautiful places in California, not Southern California, in all of California. Newport Beach was ranked #1. That went out to 4 million national and international people on a social media platform. I sent it to you. This project does not represent what Newport Beach has worked so very hard to be a envy of the world and to be the beauty that represents it to be #1. As Deborah Rosenthal, I thought, pointed out, this is a project that will last 55 plus years. It can very well take Newport Beach down the wrong path with the wrong look. And I would like to ask that council ask the staff to go back and modify the project that represents what the community wants, and the community then will embrace it 100%, and it will be very successful, and it will make a lot of money. But the project as is, I don't think it will be successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have another caller? Hello, please mute your device and go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Avery and distinguished council members. Jim Maloney, just calling in to add some additional comment. I think that all of the public comment you've heard to date this evening is very accurate. I personally participated in the Planning Commission hearings on this project. I gave comment, and I'm just calling in to reiterate some of those comments to you because I understand you're now between the Planning Commission and the Coastal Commission. I think it's very important to look at this project for what it is. It's precedent. If this project goes through as is, every other lot along PCH in Mariner's Mile could very well look like this. The argument that you will hear going forward is, well, you allowed it on this property. You're now prohibiting me from doing it. Why? I think it's very simple. You need to take into consideration public safety. You need to do a traffic report. 35 apartments, there's going to be 2 people in each apartment. Each is going to have a car. That's 70 cars. This car dealership, this boutique car dealership, let's call it what it is. It's not a boutique car dealership. It's a museum. No one's going in there to buy cars. I wholeheartedly support Councilman Dixon's point, which is what tax revenue is this bringing to the city? If you want to know, look down the street to the building that was painted bright blue on the roof and all the walls by Mr. Moyachetti, Mark, and Manouche. That's their property. At the Planning Commission, they said they had nothing to do with that building painted blue. They said, oh, that was their tenant doing it. Well, let's be honest. They are both the landlord and the tenant on these properties. If you want Mariners Mile to look like, how shall I call it, a car dealership row, we did not allow Porsche, Power Newport, to move their car dealership onto Mariners Mile for this exact reason. We don't need a row of car dealerships on Mariners Mile. I would encourage you to require at least story poles. With all the money and time spent on this project, I'm still confused as to why story poles with flags haven't been put up so that we can all see. This is a common requirement in Laguna Beach, and unless we want to look like Marina del Rey with Lincoln Boulevard and car dealerships, I would encourage you to do what's right and send this back to the planning board, back to the drawing board so we can see what this looks like in reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any further public comment? All right, seeing none, bring it back to council.
If I could jump in just briefly, I think that an important point that was raised by Mr. Matzler was related to the density bonus law and incentives. And I think it's important for the council as you look at this issue and analyzing it, that you know that that density bonus incentive cannot be requested here this evening. Whether it could have been requested or not, that's something that would have to be analyzed, but it can't be requested here tonight. And so what that means is you do your traditional analysis of whether or not the use permit should be granted, under the traditional findings that are set forth in the municipal code.
Ms. Dixon?
This was a no one. I'll come in.
Will?
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Matzler, I got a follow-up question for you. So one of the things that I'm struggling with on the law, on the legal side of this, has been the discussion on the parking and the commercial and the the individualized project. I'm also struggling a bit when we're talking about a lot of the design elements, the subjective versus objective analysis when we're trying to work through on the Housing Accountability Act issue, and then the parking in general, the parking issues in general. I'm also trying to wrap my head around this the density bonus discussions that we're hearing tonight as well, and I really hate doing this because I'm wondering if I would like to have more analysis on all of this because I'm trying to figure out how to get to a decision on this. And I'm wondering, the applicant has asked you for a continuance, asked us for a continuance. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to give them that like a 4-week continuance to bring back at our second meeting in May, at which point you can hopefully between now and then work out a lot of these issues. And I've fingers crossed, maybe that happens. But I'd really like to have a much better understanding of the parking issues, the design element issues from an objective, subjective standard, and then density bonus issues as well. I'd love it if you could work with their attorney to kind of figure out where, if you can't agree, that's fine. But I want to get to a point where we're making the right call, obviously. And given that this is the first time we're dealing with the Housing Accountability Act in a way that is this aggressive, I'd like to get it right. And I'm wondering if the continuance that they've asked for tonight, your client would be willing to take, and then come back at the second meeting in May, and maybe address the additional concerns, but at least address the concerns that I'm raising right now.
Yeah. Thank you, council member. We are open to a continuance for 4 weeks. I think that we've heard a lot of new things tonight that we want to respond to in writing. And so we accept that continuance.
All right. Well, I mean, we're not giving it to you yet, but that's why I'm asking if. Well, I don't want to. I'm not going to preclude council members from speaking, but I'm going to make a motion to continue to the second meeting in May for further public discussion, but certainly to answer some of the questions you've heard tonight that are a bit new and complicated.
Ms. Dixon?
Yes, maybe Mr. Georges, where are you? Oh, there you are. I have some questions in terms of staff's review. I'm reading in the resolution, and which is included our land use policies 5.1.9 and 5. 2.1 on page 1216 and 1217. So just so I could better understand, and this is relevant to our review of this project, but roof design, I'm just going to go through several, and then you could comment when I finish. Roof design, modulate roof profiles to reduce the apparent scale of large structures and to provide visual interest and variety. Okay, I'm just taking a few examples here. Require that a new development within existing commercial districts and corridors complement existing uses and exhibit a high level of architectural and site design in consideration of the following principles. And included in the following principles: treatment of the ground floor of buildings to promote pedestrian activity by avoiding long continuous blank walls, incorporating extensive glazing for transparency, and modulating and articulating elevations to promote visual interest. Also, extensive on-site landscaping, including mature vegetation to provide a tree canopy to provide shade for customers. Incorporation of plazas and expanded sidewalks to accommodate pedestrian, outdoor dining, and other activities. And then, as I referenced earlier, just one other point. The buildings would be constructed with high-quality wood, glass, and metal siding to integrate the design of the buildings with adjacent uses and the natural environment. Okay, Mr. Georges, how does staff agree with these findings, that the findings of this proposed project comport with our land use municipal code?
So thank you, Councilmember Dixon. Clearly, a lot of this is subjective, and so this goes through kind of multiple staff members to review this. From an articulation standpoint, the heights of the roofs have been articulated. We feel that it does provide that pedestrian connection. There is the landscaping. So we go through this process. It is subjective from a staff level. But for staff, we actually propose all this information to the Planning Commission, and I've said that before. That's the kind of that body that has that kind of final say for us. So I think what we did miss is that natural wood material, that quality wood, and Councilmember Dixon and you and I spoke about that. That's clearly something that we did not catch and capture. I'll admit to that. But a lot of the other elements that we felt that did comply with our local coastal plan, our policies, and then the same information we provided that to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission approved this item and found all these items to be consistent.
Since you brought up the Planning Commission, did anyone on the Planning Commission ask you about the aesthetics, the architectural, the complementary aspects?
Not on this project.
No, they don't. They don't typically do that. I'm really disappointed about that. Sorry to say, because they're all good people, but I rarely hear them ask, or when I read the minutes of the meeting or watch them, I rarely hear any discussion of the material. One member maybe, one or two at the most. But now, obviously, it's put before us because it's been appealed, and I'm glad it was. Is it appropriate for us to be looking at in this compliance with our municipal code? Are we? Am I restating these provisions of our municipal code in terms of land use? Is that appropriate to be looking at this project in that context? Because the subjectivity of staff and the subjectivity of the council, I mean, it's subjective. We can look at it.
Absolutely. You can look at everything that's in front of you.
And so I could have the opinion that I don't feel it complies with our municipal code in an important part of our community that we call, as one gentleman said, Mariner's Mile, not Modern Mile or whatever it was, or Jody said that. I think it needs a lot of work. I frankly do not support the project as it is currently designed, and if it's going to be voted to be continued, I don't support that necessarily. I'd like to see a wholesale redesign to comply with our municipal code. That's my subjective opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Brenner?
Simone, while you're there, Simone, I have a question about Dave Tanner's comment when he said flat roof not allowed.
I'm not sure why Mr. Tanner made that reference. Flat roofs are allowed in our code.
Okay. I wanted your opinion about that. And also, I believe it was also Dave that said vents and elevator shafts are not delineated. Is that true? And are they normally?
So I think that makes a good point. So vents, you get a lot of plumbing vents coming out of the roof. So those view sims really don't call that out. They're allowed to kind of penetrate off the roof, and so are those the elevator shafts. And remind me, Matt, how many elevators? 2 elevator shafts. So they're allowed. Are they allowed over the height? Yes, they are allowed. Per our code, they're allowed over the height.
But are they not normally shown on the drawings?
The elevator shaft should be shown on the drawings. The venting usually is not.
Okay. And I'm wondering about our policy as far as rooftop decks go. I know we've had various restaurants that have anticipated putting rooftop decks, and do we have a policy on rooftop decks?
We don't have an actual policy. The biggest issue with rooftop decks is the noise.
Yes.
That's always been the concern. We always ask the applicant to do sound analysis, use a sound consultant to do analysis and provide that study to us. What is the sound? But we don't have a policy. We do not.
But is that something that we can use as a criteria if we don't have a policy, or how do we, or we can just say on the basis of the sound analysis that we cannot approve it because it will not be conducive to the peace and quiet of the neighborhood, or what?
Usually, because that ambient noise of Coast Highway, it's usually louder than just the people talking. So what we found is it's usually the music, the live music, the amplified music. And so that sound analysis will do that study with the music, included the music, and figure out what are those decibel levels from a theoretical standpoint. And that's where we impose conditions to limit those hours of that live music. And that's how usually it's been done.
Okay, another question. As far as approving a commercial site, do we always take into account what they say they're going to, I mean, isn't there just a standard that this commercial site is supposed to have this amount of parking, and regardless of what they say they're going to do there or not do there?
So we do have a standard, a parking standard. This particular use for this particular project, it's boutique. It's not a Toyota dealership. So we don't have a parking standard for this boutique use.
So a new name means we haven't thought about that name.
Correct. And so we asked the applicant to do a study. Hire a professional engineer, traffic, do a study, bring back the analysis. Mr. Tony Bryan has spent a lot of time on that parking study and provided a lot of comments.
I'm very bothered by that.
Understood.
Because I just think that in the future that's going to be a problem, and someone's going to come to us, maybe after us, someone else, and say, we don't have the parking, but we can't get the parking, and are you going to deny us the opportunity to have our business there? And it just seems like we're setting up a problem for the future there by under-parking that commercial use.
Understood.
Let me see if I have any other questions here. I think a traffic study should have been done. I'm very bothered by Avon and the use of Avon as ingress and egress. I mean, it should be called Avon Alley. It's not a street. And now that I know that it's 5 independent parcels, is that even a city street, or how does that come to be that we're using that as a city street?
We've been using it for a while, and I think that's the history of all this. We've always used Avon as its current condition. Definitely needs to be looked at.
Okay. One last thing. In the general plan, the community compatibility and the general plan requirement about the village feel and marine services, that's also concerning to me. So I would support looking at this in greater detail and hopefully doing some remediation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill?
Yeah, I just want to come back around. I mean, the state law is the the hindrance in all of this discussion. We keep coming back and talking about our municipal code and our general plan and the subjective standards inside of all of those. And the state purposefully made laws to take the subjective standards away from us for the sole purpose of making sure that more housing could be built. And that's been happening for years now. And that's the problem with what we were talking about on this Housing Accountability Act. And it's incredibly frustrating. But again, trying to figure out how to get it right. And that's why I've asked for the continuance, because I want to get this right. You know, I don't know what in our code is now overridden completely on this, the subjective standards of all of this. I know Ms. Dixon, you used the word subjective about 10 times in that conversation, kind of jokingly, and it's, I don't understand the difference between, I'm trying to get to the design standards, and I'm trying to figure out what design standard is objective and what design standard is subjective. What can we analyze? Because the problem is, and I'll just remind everybody, go to page 5 of our staff report. This page 5 outlines what our findings would have to be. And if we are to deny this, if after consideration of the written and oral evidence presented, the City Council desires to either disapprove or impose a condition that the project be developed at a lower density or with other conditions that would adversely impact feasibility of the proposed project, we have to return with a resolution, and it's the housing development project would have a specific adverse impact upon public health or safety unless the project is denied or approved upon the condition that the project be developed at a lower density. As used in this paragraph, a specific adverse impact means a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on objective, identified written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the application was deemed complete. And also, there's no feasible method to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid the adverse impact identified other than the disapproval of the housing development project or the approval of the project upon the condition that it be developed at a lower density. I'm trying to figure out how do you get there, and that based on this, because if we can't use subjective standards, I'm not really clear on how design standards could be used as an objective basis. If the parking issues are on a project on a holistic basis, and requiring more parking would therefore impact the ability to do the housing, does that count as a whole, or can we break out the commercial side of the parking in order to get to a discussion on whether that parking study is correct without implicating the housing? This is complicated. It's hard, and there's no question. It's meant to be, well, it's actually meant to be easy. It's meant to be approve the housing. Right? That's what the state's trying to tell us to do. And we're trying to analyze this within our own standards. And I think that's appropriate to do. And every city council should try to do that, but we should do it right. So that's why I'm asking for the continuance. So I've made a motion. If anyone would like to second it, great. If not, then it'll die.
I used the wrong term. I was going through my review of the architectural detail and compliance with the land use. I think those were objective comments. Anyway, so someone may disagree, but I believe those were objective comments. Safety has been mentioned several times. The police reports have been cited. Hundreds of accidents in that area from Dover to Newport Boulevard. So safety is a relevant objective standard that we should be looking at as well, because we're feeding into that. And the parking is an objective question. I was going to say one other thing. Simone, are we limited, speaking of state mandates these days, are we limited to the number of meetings that we could have on this application?
We are. It's limited to 5. Tonight's our 3rd public hearing.
So we have potentially 2 more.
Correct.
If we wanted to.
Correct.
Also, may I ask another question? Is it, trying to understand our action tonight, if we continue it, we ask for modifications. If we deny it, then with the proviso that the applicant can come back, as we've heard people say today, a development project is good if it is conforming to our general plan and safe and provides for the necessary, does the parking and traffic studies that we've talked about. So if we were to not approve it, if we were to deny it, but we could welcome a reapplication under those conditions?
If the city council would like to deny the item, we'd have to return back to at a future meeting with a resolution for denial. So that'd be an important piece to it, and then the applicant can choose to resubmit a new application.
One option may be, rather than deny it, if the applicant wanted to withdraw the project and resubmit and redesign it, that might be an option as well, rather than have a denial.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Brenner?
I am really concerned about the health and safety aspect of this, and one of the important points is when you come down the stairs from John Wayne Park and step off the curb into the alley, there's no view for the cars to see the pedestrian or for the pedestrian to see the oncoming cars. And I think if you've got almost 300 car trips a day going through there, that is a health and safety issue. We really need a traffic study there. I mean, there's so many problematic parts of this in that area, and I know it's not the applicant's, it's not his responsibility to solve the problems on Tustin, but that does need to be resolved. But it is part of the problem that this is going to create almost 300 additional car trips there in an area that is not well planned. And maybe it's our fault that it's not well planned, but it's not conducive to the kind of development that this is going to provide or that's going to be in the future. And I would suspect that the applicant would really want us to resolve this issue because he's got future projects there that we need to do something better than we're doing. It's just not well done right now.
Do we have any others? Kevin, are you good? Okay. I just have a couple comments on this. This is important because it really is a part of what happens next in Mariner's Mile, and obviously the Moschietti family is a big part of the future, and I think there's many ways to point the finger here because there's some of the things we've done, and I think we perhaps unwittingly encourage things that ultimately are not good for the city in terms of how this more subjective things in terms of how things look. I think anybody goes by Lido House Hotel and they think, most people go, wow, that's just fantastic. It's a nice building, it's nice architecture, it fits, it's big, but still I get the sense the community likes that building. And then other buildings like the View, people are just incensed about how that got built. So these are all things that we can't really control for, but yes, we can in a way because of the general plan and the there's a lot about this that at the very least encourages design elements and just a good building, if you will. But the price of real estate today really demands on someone who buys it, because these are commercial buildings, to come up with a good return, and that's the way it works here. But going forward, what we're going to need is good partnerships with people that are developing our critical areas. This building would be fine if it was somewhere else. If it was in West Newport, if it was up in the commercial zone, I think there's a big block building going up there. But we've got these I think the residents that have spoken tonight have hopes and aspirations for a Mariner's Mile that sort of meets the dream, if you will. And the dream's not perfect. I mean, the dream is not going to be perfect, but it is going to get built. And I would just like to see, and I'm speaking for myself, just a better partnership between the community and the developers of these really iconic properties that where they're still able to realize their justified return, and yet buildings are delivered and developments delivered that works for the community and people are proud of and happy to see, and they're up there at the park and they feel good about it. I don't think this building really encroaches. I know what it does, and ideally story poles would be great, but I've looked at it enough to know that it's not blocking the bay view, but it's getting some of those views down that along the bayfront where you're looking between buildings. And when you look out there, the buildings are all different shapes, and so it's very organic, and that's pleasing to the eye. That's something that we like in our community, is sort of an organic feel. These things came together obviously they were constrained by the codes, but they were also built by people that had a sensitive eye to the architecture and wanted to work within the community. And this roof line will probably cover up most of that. And that's not a huge loss, and I don't think it comes to a point where you say this is ruining the view of John Wayne Park. It's taking some of the view, a small part of the view, but it's the totality of the project that's the problem here, in my view. And it's also part of our future. We're going to have more car trips. That whole area has been, since Arnold Haskell bought the property in about 1956, and then they never really fully developed it. And there's a lot of reasons why. And that was to the benefit of a lot of folks who enjoyed uninterrupted views and just the feeling of space. But we know, because we've been here a long time, most of us, that Newport never rests, and these spaces that we loved, I mean, like, and certain buildings that we loved, are going to disappear. And that's just part of we're not Laguna Beach, we're not Marin, but somehow we're the #1 city, according to this article, that people want to visit. So this is a long way of saying, I think the community is experiencing a sense of loss in terms of just that there's this turnover is going to happen here in this area. And I think the community involvement is really important, because we should do what we can to work with folks to say, please try and do something that works for us, but obviously still works for you. We cannot impinge on people's property rights for many reasons. But I think we could do a better job from the very beginning in the planning process and with staff working with people to just encourage particular styles and look back to, really, as Ms. Dixon has done here with all her notes, on the general plan and what we're trying to encourage. And that's what we're doing. We're encouraging, because we don't believe in telling property owners what they can do. If somebody wants to paint their house blue, that's fine with me. I don't like it, but that's their right. And all of our houses in our neighborhoods are different. And we've got a modern house right next to a very traditional house. Several examples of that in Newport Heights. And so that's our community. But here, I understand what the community is going through. I feel it. I think anybody, does when you stand up there at the park and you look out, and there's all those low-lying buildings. It's exceptional, and we're going to lose part of that. So what I'm saying is I concur with Mr. O'Neill's point. I'd like to continue the item, and we've learned a lot here tonight, and we should work toward seeing what we can do to try and mitigate this project. And one of the questions I had real quick for Mr. Georges, and I asked you this before, was the whole east wall is just solid on that building.
It's on the property line.
Yeah, and so by code, it has to be solid.
That's correct.
No windows, no openings.
No windows, correct.
Right, it's just, so there's constraints for this type of construction in this area to do this. So when you obviously build out to the property line, right? So, yeah. Right, yeah, exactly. So, all right, did we have a second? Any more discussion? We do. Yeah, yeah, I'll second it. Yep, call for the vote.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mayor, who provided the second to the motion?
The mayor did.
Thank you.
What is the motion?
The motion is to continue to the second meeting in May. Well, I don't think anything needs to come back, but I've asked for a number of discussion points on parking and HAA and subjective versus objective analysis, so I can have a better understanding of the progression of how to get to a decision.
May I make a friendly amendment? Can we review compliance with our general plan?
Well, we would have to anyway. My point is that a lot of what has been discussed as part of our general plan is, in my view, subjective versus objective. That's why I'm trying to understand the discussion on objective versus subjective. So if there's an objective reason to deny it, then I would expect the residents to provide that to us.
Okay.
All right. So
With Mayor Pro Tem Muldoon voting no, the motion carries 4-1, and with council members Duffield and Blom recusing themselves.
okay, thank you. Okay, we're on to item 13, resolution number 2021-37, waiver of fees for the permitting of accessory dwelling units.
Mayor, we did talk quite a bit, during the study session
Yes,
on the ADUs. This is.
Do we need a report on this? We do not.
Okay.
All right. Council members have any questions?
No, but I will move the staff recommendation.
Okay. Great. All right.
Open public comment?
Yep. Do we have any public comments on this item? Any public comments in the community room? Any public comments here? Telephones? All right. Seeing none. I don't blame them. Okay. we'll
Yeah, I
close-
just,
Hold on one moment, please, for the vote.
Yes.
Oh,
I just want to ask Simone one question about this item. This isn't a chance to, I think, announce this opportunity to the residents, and one reason we're pushing for this is to try to gather as many accessory dwelling units as possible. Can you just, couple sentences, say what this means for those who are watching? And
So if anybody would like to get a permit for an ADU or a JADU, this resolution actually waives the permitting fees, the plan check fees, any city fees. It does not waive school fees, but any city fees, it'll waive those fees. And this program will continue to the end of 2022. So this is really to encourage, if you have that illegal unit, start talking to the city. Happy to work with you as the property owner and try to find ways to legalize it ADU. And there's no fees that need to be paid to get that permit.
Great. So, if it's possible, I don't know if I need to do this here, but I would like this to be sent out to the residents, either electronically or maybe consider even a written format eventually, to start promoting this concept to the residents to participate. Sometimes we have to get city authorization for a press release to be, or council authorization to get a press release released on a subject. But I would like to promote this as much as possible to get the word out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Simone, could I just ask a question? Because Simone, you had talked earlier about doing a much bigger study and about doing a survey and doing a variety of things, taking other actions. So aren't you going to be coming back to us with a proposal for that, or are you just moving forward with doing all those things?
We are definitely just moving forward. Your housing element that was on the study session has a lot of those action plans that we have to study all this, we have to promote, especially if we want to boost our ADU, we have to do all of the above.
So
we have to do a lot of work.
Okay, you'll be doing all of that
Yes.
in addition. Okay.
Correct.
Great. Okay, the public hearing is closed. We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
With council members Blom and Duffield absent, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the last item for the evening is the coronavirus update.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'll keep this really brief given the lateness. And also particularly the numbers are fairly consistent right now. If we move on to, you'll see the numbers that just came out today, you know, they come out weekly. So the case per 100,000 did tick down slightly, so that's a good sign. And generally the positivity and the health equity metric have been staying at a good low level, and those are at the yellow tier, as you recall, but we're still in the orange tier because that case rate per 100,000 needs to drop below 2. So that's what we're looking at. So in that sense, that's a little stagnant, but on the other hand, it's not moving up, and the trend still remains very, very good there. So I think if we go to the next slide, that's just on the track. Overall, in the entire state, the numbers are very positive. And in fact, the numbers that came out for LA County today with their adjusted case rate, they are actually have hit all 3 of their metrics into the yellow tier starting today. So being adjoining, that's probably a good sign overall for us too. So I'm going to turn it over very quickly to Chief Boyles just to talk a little bit about vaccinations, and we'll go from there.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Jeff Boyles, your fire chief. The vaccination pods continue in their various locations around the county. About 30% of the population now in Orange County has been vaccinated. The Disney ADA pod is set to close April 30th. As we mentioned earlier, the City of Newport Beach and the fire department will be hosting a clinic in the here at the Civic Center in the community room right behind us tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We've been allocated 400 Moderna doses from the county, which are ours, so we were doing it by appointment only. There are still several, actually a couple hundred doses available, so we'll be accepting walk-ins as well. If anybody's interested in just coming tomorrow, we can probably accommodate those. Overall, the vaccination percentage, so here's some good news. 30% of the overall population is a little bit low, but the percentage of people over the age of 65 throughout the county is running in about the mid to low 70s, according to the statistics from the county. Newport Beach exceeds those in 2 different zip codes, 92657 and 92625, which are 82 and 78% respectively for folks over the age of 65. However, Ms. Dixon is not going to like to hear zip code 92661 is the lowest at 62% in the entire county right now. So the lowest percentage of people over the age of 65, we have 62% of people in that particular zip code vaccinated. So we'd like to focus some efforts there.
I'm in 3.
That's the class of 47.
92661, Peninsula.
Down Balboa Road.
It's right there.
Did you say 92625 was?
92625 is 78%.
It's and what I'm sorry, what was
I
92657?
figured that was coming. 92625 is 82% of those over the age of 65. So we're doing really well in some areas, and we have some work to do in some other areas. So at least we know what we can target. 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Our medical call volume with the Newport Beach Fire Department is up 11% now, this time year over year from the last 12 months compared to what it was last year. And our transports in our ambulances to the hospital are up 10%. So you may remember me talking that we had a little bit of a lull last year where we dipped in statistics, and now we're seeing a pretty significant rise. So it's coming back.
Sirens all the time.
Yes, they are coming back. And with the off of the vaccination issue, back to the beaches, they seem to be people are coming back to the beach, and the junior lifeguard registration closed today, and we had 1,670. Not just passed the swim test, actually registered. So our largest program to date before that was 1,409. So we far exceeded it this year. So it'll be a bigger program than any year past. And that's the end of my report.
Awesome. Okay. Any further council questions? Any phone calls? All right. Anybody wishes to speak? All right. Okay, motion for reconsideration?
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the city council either at this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Thank you. And tonight we are adjourning in memory of David Kawashima. Ms. Dixon and Mr. O'Neill.
Oh, you had it? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm actually going to read the statement from his wife, Jacqueline McClure. David Kawashima. David was a very sweet, caring, genuine, and kind man with a great sense of humor. He was always upbeat about everything in his life. Virtually everyone who met him liked him immediately. This is from his wife. When I first met him 29 years ago, I knew he was someone very special, and I have been with him ever since. David loved his work and became friends with all of his clients. They knew that they could count on him to show up on time, be professional, and deliver a great product for them every time. He made everyone look good in their pictures because everyone was so comfortable around him. Some of his clients used David year after year and counted on him to make their annual events special. David always felt lucky to be able to do work that truly interested him. After more than 30 years in business, he still loved what he did and all the people he got to meet. He started out in journalism, shooting sports. He got some really great shots over the years and was so happy to be able to combine his work with sports, a perfect combination for him. Over the years, he worked at the Irvine World News and the LA Times as a freelancer as he built his corporate photo business. And David loved his sports, especially UCLA basketball, and drove me crazy talking to me about it all the time. His biggest hobby was music. He was constantly making playlists from his huge music library. His favorite outing was still a trip down to San Diego to the zoo to see his buddies, which is how he thought about the animals there. What you may not have known about David is how dedicated he was to his parents in their older years. He took care of them for a long time and made it possible for them to stay in their home. He was also a great stepdad to my children, who both adored him. David leaves behind me, his spouse of 29 years, 2 stepchildren, Irene and Louis, a brother, Tony Kawashima, and sister, Susan Kawashima. David made friends everywhere he went and kept those friendships forever. Most of his clients became friends too, so there are numerous people feeling this terrible loss, as we all do. Thank you.
Oh, you are?
Oh, I didn't know.
We're adjourned.